My fiancé said, "I'm moving in with my boss, Jamie. We're having a baby together." I replied, "Congratulations," then canceled her engagement ring, returned her car, and changed every password. 6 hours later, she was at my door sobbing that Jamie had kicked her out. It was a regular Thursday. You know, the kind of day that tastes like burnt coffee and unpaid overtime. 2 p.m., caffeine running low, brain running on fumes, and my life still had the illusion of normalcy. I was halfway through staring blankly at an Excel sheet that looked more like a modern art piece when my phone buzzed. Oliver, my fiancé's voice came through, sharp and businesslike, the tone she reserved for quarterly meetings and passive-aggressive brunches with her mother. "Hey, babe," I said, rubbing my temple, waiting for the usual complaint about traffic, coworkers, or how her Starbucks order was once again a tragic misunderstanding of her worth. But nope. This time, the universe said, "Let's spice things up." "I'm moving in with my boss," she said. No hesitation. No build-up. Just a drive-by emotional shooting. "His name's Jamie. We're having a baby together." I blinked twice, mostly because my brain was buffering. The ceiling fan above me hummed like a soundtrack to my own stupidity. There was a pause long enough to host a full TED Talk and maybe a live Q&A. Then, calmly, like a man announcing a weather update, I said, "Congratulations." That was it. No yelling, no sobbing, no dramatic, "you'll regret this" moment. Just a calm so unnerving it could have been used as a psychological weapon. "You're not going to fight for me?" she asked, her voice suddenly dripping with something between guilt and disappointment, like she expected me to deliver a heartfelt monologue and win her back with violins swelling in the background. "Fight for what, Lily?" I said, leaning back in my chair. "You're moving in with your boss and pregnant with his child, not joining a pottery class." Silence. Then a click. Call ended. My life rebooted. For about a minute, I just sat there, staring at my phone like it might deliver a punchline. Spoiler, it didn't. The only thing that came through was a notification from Domino's, half off on 2 large pizzas. Honestly, great timing. I wish I could say I was shocked, but deep down, part of me had seen it coming. The late nights, the new perfume, the way she'd start sentences with "Jamie thinks," like the man was Moses handing her commandments. And the way she suddenly started dressing like a LinkedIn influencer. Neutrals, high heels, confidence that wasn't hers. Yeah, the clues were there. I just chose to ignore them because love makes you stupid, and I was practically a PhD holder. I put my phone down, stared at the stack of wedding magazines she'd left on the coffee table, and laughed. Not a sad laugh, not even an angry one, just that half-insane, half-enlightened kind that makes your neighbors wonder if you've finally snapped. Somewhere in the background, my laptop dinged with a work email from HR about mandatory positivity training. Oh, the irony. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't arrive with fireworks. It just slides into your afternoon like a bad software update, messes up your system, and forces you to reboot. So, I did what any sane man would do in that moment. I made coffee. Strong enough to wake up a dead conscience. As the machine gurgled like it was choking on my dignity, I replayed her words in my head. "I'm moving in with my boss. We're having a baby together." The delivery was so clean, like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror between meetings. I could practically see her filing the emotional paperwork in her head. Item 1, quit fiancé. Item 2, relocate to boss's penthouse. Item 3, justify it with vague talk about destiny. Honestly, impressive efficiency. I walked to the living room and looked around. The throw pillows she insisted on buying, the live, laugh, love sign that I'd always hated but tolerated because love does that to you. I stared at it and muttered, "You forgot leave." I wasn't heartbroken. Not yet, anyway. It was more like watching a train crash in slow motion and realizing you were the idiot who built the tracks. I sat on the couch, coffee in hand, scrolling through old photos of us on my phone. There we were at the beach, smiling like life was one long Instagram ad. Another one, her holding a puppy, captioned, "Our future baby practice." Oh, the foreshadowing. Except the baby was apparently for Jamie. You ever notice how every happy memory turns into comedy material after a breakup? I started narrating my own slideshow like a bad stand-up routine. Here's Lily at Christmas pretending to like my family. Here's Lily at my promotion party pretending she didn't secretly hate my coworkers. And here's Lily pretending fidelity was still trendy. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on the rug. Honestly worth it. Then, my phone buzzed again. I stared at it, half expecting round 2 of her announcement. Maybe something like, "By the way, can you drop off my yoga mat?" But it wasn't her. It was my friend Mason texting, "You coming to poker night?" I typed back, "Can't. My fiancé just got a promotion to side chick." He called immediately. "Dude, what the hell happened?" I told him everything, and he just whistled. "Bro, that's not a breakup. That's a plot twist." "Yeah," I said. "Apparently, I've been guest starring in a corporate romance drama." He laughed for 5 solid minutes. Then, in true best friend fashion, he said, "You want me to come over with wings and whiskey?" Tempting, but no. I wanted silence. The kind that feels like detox. After hanging up, I wandered into the bedroom. Her closet door was open, half her clothes gone, the other half hanging there like confused survivors of a fashion apocalypse. On the dresser sat the engagement ring box I'd left open that morning when I kissed her goodbye before work. I picked it up, stared at the stupidly sparkly diamond, and thought, that rock cost more than my car's down payment. The kind of realization that makes your blood boil and your credit score cry. I put it back in the box, closed it gently, and placed it in the kitchen drawer next to the takeout menus, where all bad decisions belong. Then I did something productive. I opened my laptop and Googled how to emotionally unsubscribe from a relationship. The results? Mostly inspirational quotes written by people who've clearly never had to cancel a joint gym membership. I closed it, sighed, and said to no one, "Step 1, stop paying for her Spotify." That's when it hit me, not the heartbreak, but the absurdity. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a cleanup job. My life had just been hacked by an amateur, and it was time for a full system restore. Still, before any of that, I had to process the sheer ridiculousness of it all. I mean, who does that? Moves in with their boss and calls their fiancé about it during work hours? That's not even classy betrayal. That's Walmart betrayal. Discounted, disorganized, and available in bulk. I poured another cup of coffee, because if you're going to have a life crisis, you might as well be caffeinated, and sat back on the couch. I tried to imagine her breaking the news to Jamie. "Hey, I told Oliver about us." And Jamie probably said something like, "Oh, cool. Can you handle my calendar invites while I go tell my wife?" Oh yeah, I'd met Jamie once. The kind of guy who calls himself a visionary because he has a ring light and a LinkedIn premium account. Slick hair, fake smile, wore loafers without socks. Classic red flag behavior. I remember shaking his hand at a company gala. He had that firm, 2-second handshake that screams I rehearse in the mirror. Lily looked at him that night like he hung the moon, while I stood there holding her clutch like an idiot. Should have known. I finished my coffee, stood up, and looked out the window. The world looked the same. People walking dogs, cars honking, someone arguing over a parking spot. But everything inside me had changed. It's wild how one phone call can shift your entire reality. One minute you're planning a wedding menu. The next, you're deleting joint playlists. I won't lie. I felt the sting. The betrayal, the absurdity, the insult to my intelligence. But underneath it, there was also this strange calm. Like my brain finally understood what my gut had been screaming for months. She was never the one. And honestly, I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Nope. If she expected me to chase her like a rom-com hero in the rain, she picked the wrong genre. I was more of a dark comedy guy now. So, I took a deep breath, grabbed my car keys, and decided to drive. Not aimlessly, just far enough to let the shock settle. I ended up at a diner off the highway, the kind with neon signs and waitresses who call you hon. I ordered pancakes at 3 p.m. because why not? When life falls apart, carbs are therapy. The waitress poured my coffee and said, "You look like you just got bad news." I smirked. Something like that. My fiancé just got promoted. She blinked. Promoted? Yeah, I said, stirring my coffee. To mistress. She laughed so hard she almost spilled the pot. "Honey, you'll be just fine." And for the first time that day, I actually believed it. By the time I left the diner, the world didn't feel so heavy. The air was crisp, my stomach was full, and my phone was mercifully silent. Somewhere between the first sip of coffee and the last bite of pancake, I realized something simple. I didn't lose her. She downgraded herself. I started the car, looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, and said, "Congratulations, Lily. You just set me free." Then I drove home, ready for whatever came next. If heartbreak was a fire, I didn't pour gasoline on it. I doused it with logic, caffeine, and just a pinch of petty. Friday morning, 8 a.m. I woke up to sunlight slapping me in the face and a quiet so beautiful it almost felt illegal. No Lily yelling about her lost charger. No curling iron hissing like a venomous snake. No podcast called Women Who Manifest too loudly echoing through the apartment. Just me, my coffee, and peace that tasted like freedom and roast beans. I won't lie, for a split second I almost missed her until I saw the pile of his and hers mugs on the counter and realized, congratulations to me, they were now all mine. I poured coffee into the Boss Babe mug just out of spite. Don't judge me. Revenge caffeine tastes better. The logical part of my brain took over before breakfast was done. If she wanted to move in with her boss and play house, fine. But I was about to perform a full system purge. Oliver 2.0, post-Lily edition. First stop? The jewelry store. You ever walk into a jewelry store after a breakup? It's like entering a battlefield with diamond casualties everywhere. The guy behind the counter looked at me like he'd seen my type 100 times. Men with that, she took my piece. I'll take her sparkle energy. I slid the box across the counter. Bought this 2 months ago. Engagement ring. Never worn, except for Instagram photos. He gave me that sympathetic look trained by years of dealing with broken men and impulsive women. You're in the 60-day return window, he said, punching numbers into his computer. We can do a full refund. I smiled like a man watching karma clock in for her shift. 10 minutes later, I walked out $11,000 richer and emotionally lighter than a helium balloon. I swear, as I stepped into the parking lot, I heard the faint sound of Fiance singing Irreplaceable. It might have been a passing car, or the universe applauding. Next on my to-do list, Lily's car. Her precious white Audi that she couldn't stop bragging about. Technically, it was leased in both our names, because I, in my infinite stupidity, had co-signed. She loved saying, "It's our car," which, in hindsight, was her way of saying, "You're paying for it." Not anymore. I called the leasing company and put on my nicest, most customer service voice meets menace tone. "Hi, I need to remove my name from a co-signed vehicle. The other driver's now independently mobile." They processed it faster than expected. Turns out, when the guy making the payments backs out, they suddenly care a lot about who's on the paperwork. By 10 a.m., her Audi was no longer my problem. Her personal assistant's salary couldn't cover those payments. I almost felt bad for about 45 seconds. Then I remembered her words. I'm moving in with my boss, Jamie. Sympathy deleted. Next came the fun part. The digital purge. Wi-Fi? Password changed. Netflix? Revoked. Disney Plus? Gone. Prime Video? Expired faster than her loyalty. Even the Spotify family plan? Revoked. Sorry, family revoked too. My thumbs were moving like I was in a video game called Emotional Detachment Simulator 3000. Every click was therapy. Every password successfully changed felt like a fresh exorcism. I even renamed the Wi-Fi network from Loviness24 to Single and Secure. Petty? Maybe. Fulfilling? Absolutely. Then I logged into the joint grocery delivery account and removed her favorites. No more oat milk, kale chips, or that overpriced lavender cleaning spray that made the apartment smell like regret. I replaced them with steak, whiskey, and peanut butter. You know, the holy trinity of post-breakup essentials. But why stop there? Her gym membership, canceled. Her access to my Amazon Prime, gone. I even remembered she used my Apple ID to back up her photos once. I removed her faster than the FBI deletes files labeled classified. By 3 p.m., I'd achieved something most therapists can't promise in 6 months: closure. Every digital door that once connected her to my life had been locked tighter than Fort Knox on a federal holiday. I sat back on my couch, took a long sip of coffee, and admired the quiet. It was the kind of silence that didn't need music. You could feel the peace vibrating through the air. Around 4:30, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer, but I already knew who it was. There's a sixth sense that kicks in after a breakup. I bet that's my ex realizing actions have consequences sense. By 5 p.m., I was fully reclined, watching reruns of The Office on my own subscription, when it hit me. Somewhere out there, Lily was discovering her life no longer worked without me. The Wi-Fi didn't connect. Netflix asked for a password. Disney Plus refused to remember this device. Her Spotify logged her out mid-therapy playlist. And the gym probably told her, your membership has been canceled by the primary account holder. It was the perfect symphony of chaos, and I was the conductor. Just then, Mason called. Bro, tell me you're not doing something stupid. I grinned. Define stupid. He groaned. You're the type of guy who cleans his emotional wounds with sarcasm and caffeine. Incorrect, I said. I clean them with refunds and revoked privileges. He laughed. You're dangerous when you're calm. What's next? Operation Reset, I said. Phase 1 complete, retrieval of assets. Phase 2, reclaim peace. Phase 3, he asked. Phase 3 is classified. Translation, he said, you're gonna post a subtle revenge story on Instagram. Maybe, I said, smirking. Caption, new Wi-Fi, who dis? He nearly choked laughing. After hanging up, I looked around the apartment. It felt bigger, lighter, like I'd finally vacuumed emotional clutter out of my life. Her stuff was still in the corner, 2 boxes labeled summer clothes and miscellaneous, which I now realized meant stuff I don't care enough about to pack. I debated tossing it out the window, but settled for a more civilized approach. I taped a note on one of the boxes. Pickup window expires in 7 days. After that, items will be considered abandoned property and donated to people who still value loyalty. Then I cracked open a beer, put my feet up, and let out the kind of sigh that could end wars. The relief was real. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was performing emotional CPR on a dying relationship. Funny thing is, people always say closure comes from talking things through. Nah, closure comes from changing your passwords and seeing the unauthorized login attempt notification pop up on your phone. That's closure. That's peace with a Wi-Fi signal. My phone buzzed again, same unknown number. I ignored it. 2 minutes later, a text came through. Oliver, it's me. Please pick up. I took another sip of beer, smiled, and whispered, ah, there it is. The regret phase. The part of the movie where the villain realizes they're not the main character after all. I muted the phone and went back to the office. Fitting, really. Watching Michael Scott scream, I declare bankruptcy, while I silently declared emotional freedom. Somewhere around episode 3, my email pinged with a notification from the bank. Joint account activity alert. I opened it. She tried to transfer $800 to her personal card. Cute. I clicked cancel transaction so fast I might have broken the internet. Then I transferred the remaining balance to my new solo account, named it Freedom Fund, and deleted her name entirely. If love is blind, money should at least have 20/20th vision. By early evening, Operation Reset was in full swing. Emotionally, stabilized. Financially, fortified. Digitally, firewall secured. At 5 p.m. sharp, I sat on my couch again. Same couch where we used to argue about TV shows, wedding venues, and whether I took her ambition seriously. Now it was just me, the couch, and my upgraded sense of humor. My TV reflected my own smirk as I whispered, you moved in with your boss, huh? Hope the benefits package includes emotional support. For a while, I just sat there, watching the sunlight fade across the walls, thinking about how endings are rarely dramatic. They're just quiet, like flipping a switch off. The world keeps turning, but you're suddenly lighter, less cluttered. And honestly, it felt good to take control, to do something instead of wallowing. Because heartbreak? It feeds on helplessness. The second you act, change a password, get a refund, cancel a membership, you start starving it. Around 7 p.m., my stomach reminded me that revenge doesn't cook dinner. I ordered takeout, Chinese, extra spicy, because apparently, I enjoy pain with flavor. When the delivery guy showed up, he said, big night in. I grinned. Nah, big night of moving on. He raised an eyebrow like, I've delivered to enough heartbroken people to recognize that tone, and handed me the bag. Good luck, bro. Hope she's watching from somewhere. I smirked. Oh, trust me, she'll notice when Netflix asks her to sign up again. Dinner tasted like victory and chili oil. As I ate, I made one final decision. I wasn't going to play the victim. Lily might have rewritten her love story mid-sentence, but I was taking the pen back. My story wasn't over. It just got a plot twist. By 9 p.m., I was stretched out on the couch, full belly, full peace, and not a single regret. My phone was silent, my conscience cleaner than my inbox, and my mental hard drive freshly formatted. 6:30 p.m. ding-dong. Now, under normal circumstances, the sound of a doorbell means pizza, a delivery, or Jehovah's Witnesses with perfect timing. But when your ex-fiancée recently left you for her boss and then got locked out of your streaming accounts, it usually means something worse. I looked at the doorbell camera feed on my phone, and there she was, Lily, standing on my porch like a Hallmark movie reject. Waterproof mascara had clearly failed the quality assurance test, and she was holding 2 suitcases and the kind of regret that could fuel an entire therapy convention. I leaned back on the couch, sipped my beer, and whispered, well, if it isn't the CEO of Poor Decisions Incorporated. For a solid minute, I debated pretending I wasn't home. But curiosity won, because if karma ever hand-delivers entertainment to your doorstep, you open the curtain and enjoy the show. I walked to the door but kept the chain lock on, because I wasn't about to get ambushed by nostalgia or guilt, or worse, her perfume. Jamie kicked me out, she sobbed. Her voice cracked like a sad violin played by an amateur. He said he needs time to process everything. Already, I said, raising an eyebrow. Wow, the man moves fast. I guess promotions at that company have a probation period too. Her eyes darted around, embarrassed, angry, desperate. All the stages of regret in under 10 seconds. It's complicated, she sniffled. He said he's confused. He's married, Oliver. I didn't know until yesterday. Translation, he's trying to save his own ass. Ah, I said, nodding like a therapist who's just diagnosed stupidity. So, what you're saying is, he needs time to explain to his wife why he suddenly has a pregnant intern living in his guest room. She flinched. That's not fair. Neither is life, Lily. But it's honest. Her face scrunched up like she was about to unleash a guilt trip, but I was already 5 steps ahead. You can't just cut me off like this, she said, clutching her belly for dramatic effect, like she thought the pregnancy card was the ultimate cheat code. I folded my arms. You moved in with your boss, pregnant with his baby, and told me about it during business hours. I'm just respecting your new LinkedIn life choice. You chose corporate housing, remember? Just for tonight, she pleaded. Please, Oliver. I have nowhere else to go. I leaned slightly forward, keeping the chain tight. Sorry, occupancy's full. Try the HR department. Maybe they can do an employee wellness check. Her expression twisted into disbelief. You're heartless. No, I said. I just learned boundaries. I closed the door gently, letting the chain rattle for emphasis. She banged on it, shouting my name like I was some kind of rom-com hero about to chase her through the rain. But this wasn't a Nicholas Sparks movie. This was real life, and my popcorn was getting cold. I turned up the volume on my TV. The sound of the Office theme song drowned out her crying. Honestly, it was beautiful, like a meditation app that finally worked. She eventually stopped knocking. The camera showed her sitting on the porch steps, mascara streaked, and scrolling her phone, probably texting every person in her contacts list for a backup couch. I imagined the message. Need a place to stay, temporarily homeless but emotionally available. About an hour later, she left. The headlights of an Uber lit up the driveway, and she dragged her suitcases away, head low. The universe gave me a parting gift, the soft thud of her heel breaking as she stumbled onto the curb. I raised my beer. Cheers to gravity and karma. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter, like someone had vacuumed the emotional dust out of my life. I brewed coffee, opened the blinds, and there it was again, silence. The kind that felt earned. But peace, my friend, never lasts long when drama knows your address. Around 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. New text, unknown number. I didn't even have to open it to know. Please, I made a mistake. Jamie lied about everything. I can't afford this motel. There it was. The Desperation Trilogy. I screenshotted them all and put them in a folder titled Future Comedy Material. Maybe one day, I'd read them during my best man's speech, at someone else's wedding, obviously. By noon, my phone was vibrating like a blender. She was borrowing phones now, friends, co-workers, probably her sister. The messages ranged from manipulative to pathetic. Then her sister Zoe called my work line. My work line. The audacity. I answered, voice professional. Oliver Bennett speaking. Don't act formal with me, she snapped. Lily told me everything. You're heartless. She's pregnant and homeless. I leaned back in my chair. Homeless? She moved out voluntarily. That's called remote work. You're unbelievable, she said. She's carrying a child. Yeah, and she's also carrying the consequences of her decisions. Big difference. Click. End of conversation. 5 minutes later, her mom called. Because of course she did. Oliver, how could you throw a pregnant woman out on the street? I sighed. Elaine, she threw herself out. I just changed the locks. You should be ashamed of yourself, she shouted. Trust me, I was. For about 5 years. Then she moved in with her boss and cured me. She gasped so dramatically I thought she might pass out. I ended the call before she started quoting scripture. By lunchtime, my coworkers were whispering. You can always tell when gossip starts circulating. The break room goes quiet when you walk in, and people suddenly discover the fascinating art of stirring coffee in silence. I heard snippets: heartless, sociopath, emotional detachment. I smiled. People say those things like they're insults, but I call it mental cybersecurity. You learn to firewall your feelings after enough malware, disguised as love, tries to log in. That evening, I met up with Mason for drinks. He'd been dying to hear the sequel. So, let me get this straight, he said between sips. She cheated, got pregnant, moved in with her boss, got kicked out, and now she's trying to move back in with you? Correct, I said, nodding. Apparently, my house is now her backup server. He whistled. Damn, that's bold. I wouldn't even have the confidence to ask my ex for Wi-Fi, let alone housing. She's got gall, I'll give her that. He leaned in. You gonna cave? I gave him a look that could have frozen lava. Mason, I changed the locks. I revoked her Prime account. I'm this close to calling NASA to remove her from the planet. He laughed so hard the bartender looked over. You're evil, bro. Evil? Nah, just organized. When I got home that night, I checked my doorbell camera again out of habit. No crying ex, no emotional blackmail, just peace. Beautiful, uneventful peace. I poured a drink, sat back, and thought about how quickly tables can turn. 1 week ago, she was choosing champagne flutes for our wedding registry. Now she was probably Googling cheap extended stay motels with breakfast. The poetic symmetry almost made me emotional. Almost. I'll be honest, though, there was a weird satisfaction in knowing I didn't break down, didn't beg, didn't turn into the cliché guy sending 3 a.m. I miss you texts. I handled it with grace and sarcasm, the two greatest weapons of the emotionally evolved. Still, there's something wild about how fast a relationship can implode. You think you know someone, and then one day they're standing on your porch crying, and you realize the person you loved might have just been a really convincing improv actor. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, same one I'd stared at during the call. Only now it wasn't spinning regret, it was circulating relief. I thought about what she'd said on the phone that day. You're not going to fight for me? And I laughed. Because that's what she never understood. I don't fight for people who walk themselves out of my life. I'm not a warrior. I'm a man with decent Wi-Fi and boundaries. By midnight, I was out cold, sleeping deeper than I had in months. No overthinking, no checking my phone, no wondering if I'd done enough. I'd done plenty. The universe was finally on Do Not Disturb. And as for Lily, she was probably discovering that the grass isn't greener. It's just more expensive and comes with a boss named Jamie. The next morning, I woke up refreshed, made breakfast, and thought, if peace had a flavor, it'd taste like bacon and justice. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud. It's locking the door, changing the Wi-Fi password, and letting the crying intern learn what happens when you underestimate the quiet guy who keeps receipts. The next morning started like most of my post-breakup mornings. Coffee strong enough to strip paint, quiet apartment, and a vague sense that peace was finally legal again. That was until my phone started buzzing like it had a personal vendetta. I thought maybe my Amazon delivery was early or my boss was pretending to care about productivity again. But no, it was messages, lots of them. Random numbers. Unfamiliar area codes. Clearly, Lily was borrowing phones like a college freshman borrows Wi-Fi. I opened one text. Please, I made a mistake. Then another. Jamie lied about everything. A third one sealed it. I can't afford this motel. I swear, you could almost smell the desperation through the screen. I stared at the text like a scientist studying a new species of audacity. No replies, of course. I took screenshots, neatly labeled, and saved in a folder titled Future Comedy Material. I had plans for these. Maybe I'd frame them. Maybe I'd read them aloud at my next poker night. Gentlemen, tonight's entertainment. Exhibit A, The Chronicles of a Clueless Fiance. By 10 a.m., she'd escalated to voice calls. Unknown numbers again. I didn't answer. I wasn't about to get sucked into some emotional TED talk about forgiveness. But just when I thought she'd finally run out of prepaid phone minutes, my work phone rang. My work phone. I picked it up, and before I could even say hello, I heard the voice, her sister Zoe, sounding like she'd been waiting her whole life for this confrontation. "You're heartless," she snapped. "Lily's pregnant and homeless." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Homeless?" I repeated, feigning shock. "I thought she moved out voluntarily. Isn't that called remote work now?" There was a stunned silence. "You think this is funny?" she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I think it's called consequences." Click. End of call. I sat there, grinning like a man who just won an argument with gravity. Not 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Lily's mom. Of course. Because every bad sitcom needs a meddling mother-in-law figure. "Oliver, how could you?" she began, her voice trembling with righteous fury. "You threw a pregnant woman into the streets." I sighed dramatically, swirling my coffee like a villain in a soap opera. "Elaine," I said, "let's be accurate. She threw herself into the streets. I just changed the locks." "She made a mistake," she cried. "We all do." "Right," I said. "But some of us don't call our exes about it after." She gasped so loudly I thought she'd inhaled her pearls. I ended the call before she started quoting Bible verses about mercy. I'm not saying I'm allergic to guilt trips, but I'd rather sit in rush hour traffic listening to an MLM pitch. By lunch, I could tell my coworkers knew something was up. The break room felt quieter. The kind of quiet where everyone's pretending not to eavesdrop. I grabbed my sandwich, nodded at a few people, and overheard the whisper. "He's so calm." "It's creepy," another voice whispered. "I heard she's pregnant, and he kicked her out." I wanted to turn around and say, "Correction." She left me for her boss, and I revoked her Hulu, but I figured that might not go over well during an HR audit. Let them talk. I call it mental cybersecurity. Protecting your peace like a firewall protects your data. You can't hack a man who's emotionally encrypted. That evening, my friend Mason called. "Dude," he said, "your ex's sister just tagged you in a Facebook rant." I rolled my eyes. "Oh God, what's the headline?" "It's a long one," he said, laughing. Something like, "Heartless fiancé abandons pregnant woman after cheating boss disappears." Bro, the comments section is a war zone. I opened Facebook. Sure enough, there it was, a dramatic post complete with a crying emoji and a blurry photo of Lily looking like a contestant on The Bachelor, Pity Edition. People were commenting things like, "Men are trash," and prayers for her and the baby. I almost replied, "Prayers accepted," for my Wi-Fi password she lost. Instead, I just screenshotted it and added it to my collection. Exhibit B. Around 7 p.m., I got another call, this time from an unknown local number. I didn't answer. It went to voicemail. A few minutes later, the notification popped up. I pressed play, and Lily's voice filled the room. "Oliver," she began, trying to sound calm, but landing somewhere between desperate and dramatic. "I know you're mad, but please, I just need help. I don't have anyone else to call." I paused it halfway through to grab popcorn. When she said, "You were always so kind," I muttered, "Yeah, and you were always so employed. What changed?" Then she added, "I just need you to remember the man you were when you proposed." I almost laughed out loud. The man I was, I said to my TV, wasn't paying for a boss's baby shower, sweetheart. By 8 p.m., my group chat was lighting up. Mason, my buddy Ryan, and even my cousin were sending screenshots of Lily's family drama spreading online. "Bro, she's really running a PR campaign," Ryan texted. "You're the villain in her story now." I typed back, "Good. Every good story needs one." Mason replied with a gif of Thanos snapping his fingers. Accurate. Later that night, I sat outside on my porch, drink in hand, staring at the quiet street. The neighborhood cat strolled across my driveway like it owned the place, which, frankly, it probably did. I took a long sip and said to no one. You'd think cheating would come with a silence clause. Because here's the thing. People love to rewrite history, especially the ones who set it on fire. They always try to make you the arsonist. And the more you stay calm, the crazier they look. I was counting on that. The next day, my phone rang again. Work number, same tone of doom. "Mr. Bennett?" a voice asked. "This is HR. Do you have a minute?" "Oh, fantastic." My favorite words. Turns out, Lily had emailed my company. Apparently, she was claiming emotional abuse and financial abandonment. The HR rep sounded cautious, like she was handling uranium. We just want to ensure everything is okay. I smiled through the phone. Everything's great. My only crime is canceling a joint Netflix account. There was a pause. Oh, she said, caught off guard. We just needed to check. Totally understand, I said. Would you like me to forward screenshots of her texts for context? No, that won't be necessary. Call ended. HR knew nonsense when they heard it. I imagine her typing "case closed, dramatic X" in the report. That evening, Mason came over with pizza and a six-pack. You're handling this too well, he said. Most guys would have set something on fire by now. I shrugged. Oh, don't worry. I'm setting things on fire. Just not the legal kind. We clinked bottles, and he said, You think she's done? I laughed. She's only on episode 2 of her redemption arc. Sure enough, right as he left, my phone buzzed again. Another text, another unknown number. Oliver, please. Just talk to me. Jamie's ghosting me. I don't even know what to do. I typed out a reply, stared at it, then deleted it. The reply said, You could start by talking to HR. Yours, not mine. Instead, I turned off my phone, leaned back, and let out a deep exhale. There's something oddly satisfying about not replying. It's like resisting the urge to scratch a mosquito bite. Uncomfortable at first, but deeply rewarding when you realize the itch can't control you. I went to bed that night thinking about how I'd spent years trying to be her hero, her support system, her backup plan. And now, I was just a chapter in her cautionary tale. But guess what? I was fine with that. Because while she was playing the victim on Facebook, I was living rent-free in her head, and she wasn't in mine anymore. The next morning, I woke up to one final masterpiece, a group text. I don't know how she did it, but she managed to create a chat that included me, her sister, her mom, and a couple of mutual friends. The message said, Can we all be adults and talk this out? I nearly spit out my coffee. Talk this out. Like we were a college project team? No, thank you. I hit leave conversation faster than a cat dodging a bath. Seconds later, Zoe texted me separately. You're so immature. I smiled and replied, No, I'm just unavailable for bad management. Then I blocked her. And just like that, my morning was peaceful again. I looked around my apartment, the one I now fully owned emotionally and physically, and realized something. I'd finally reached the point where her chaos was nothing more than background noise. The calls, the messages, the online pity campaign, none of it mattered. Because at the end of the day, when you stop feeding drama, it starves itself. By 5 p.m., I poured myself a drink, sank into my couch, and raised a silent toast to the calm. The calls had stopped. The group texts had failed. Even the internet had moved on. And somewhere out there, Lily was probably learning the hardest lesson of all. That some bridges don't burn because someone set them on fire. They just collapse under the weight of their own lies. 2 days after the group text fiasco, I was in the middle of what normal people call moving on, which for me meant reorganizing my spice rack and pretending that alphabetizing paprika and pepper somehow counted as self-care. The phone buzzed. It was Mason. When a friend calls at 9 a.m. on a Saturday, it's either bad news or a multi-level marketing pitch. Bro, he said, sounding like a man who'd just discovered buried treasure. You sitting down? I dropped the paprika. I'm in my kitchen, not the stock market. What's up? He paused for dramatic effect. Jamie's married. I blinked. Come again. Married. Wife. House in the suburbs. 2 kids. Golden retriever. The whole Pinterest board. For a solid 5 seconds I said nothing. Then I laughed. That slow, uncontrollable laugh that starts in your chest and ends in your soul. You're telling me the man who convinced my fiancé to run off and start a family already had one? Yup, Mason said. Apparently, his wife found out about Lily. It's all over the office group chat. HR's having a meltdown. I nearly spilled my coffee. Oh, this is better than Netflix. Let me paint the picture. Jamie, the guy with the no-sock loafers and the leadership guru haircut, had been playing double life bingo. Wife at home, mistress in middle management, baby on the way, and company assets funding both lifestyles. He really thought he was invincible. Newsflash, Karma has a LinkedIn account too. I opened my laptop, because obviously I had to confirm this masterpiece myself. A quick scroll through LinkedIn and boom, Jamie's profile had gone from dynamic team leader passionate about growth to currently seeking new opportunities. Translation, fired. His photo was gone, banner removed, Endorsements vanished like witnesses in a mob movie. Corporate witness protection. Mason was still talking, feeding me details like a gossip podcast host. Apparently, his wife showed up at the office yesterday. Full-blown soap opera scene. She found out through his credit card statements. There were hotel charges, baby store purchases, and an Amazon order for prenatal vitamins. I whistled. Damn. Caught by capitalism. Exactly, he said. And get this, she confronted him during the staff meeting. I almost fell out of my chair. In the meeting? Yup. She walked in with the receipts, literally, in a manila folder. Said, if you can explain this, I'll sit down. He couldn't. HR escorted him out 5 minutes later. I leaned back, savoring every syllable. So, Lily left me for a man who left his wife for her, only for him to get left by his wife and his job in the same hour. That's the chain of command, my friend, Mason said. Natural selection. After we hung up, I just sat there in the quiet, grinning at the irony. Life has a wicked sense of humor when you stop interrupting it. I imagined Lily in a cheap motel somewhere, scrolling through her phone, realizing the man she risked everything for couldn't even risk a divorce. Somewhere out there, she was learning that promotion came with no benefits, no dental, and definitely no 401k. By noon, the gossip had made its way to my phone through mutual friends. Bro, you hear about Jamie? Did you know Lily's ex works there too? This is wild. I just replied with the same 2 words every time. Karma delivers. I decided to treat myself. Drove to my favorite diner, ordered a bacon cheeseburger with extra fries, and toasted to poetic justice with a root beer float. The waitress, Sandy, looked at me and said, "You look like a man who just got good news." I smiled. Let's just say, the universe finally clocked in for overtime. She winked. Well, cheers to that, hon. While I ate, I scrolled through my phone again, half expecting another wave of frantic texts from Lily. Sure enough, there it was. A new number. Oliver, please call me. Everything's falling apart. I stared at it, dipped a fry in ketchup, and whispered, "Everything already fell apart, sweetheart. You just showed up late to the collapse." I didn't reply. Some lessons you let life teach for you. By the time I got home, the group chat was exploding again. Ryan had sent screenshots from an anonymous Reddit post. Someone claiming to be an employee at Jamie's company had written a full expose. Our department head got caught cheating with his assistant. Wife found out, HR's in chaos, and the intern from hell is crying in the parking lot. The comments were ruthless. This sounds like an HR nightmare. Girl, get a lawyer. Plot twist. She's pregnant. One commenter wrote, bet the fiancé she left is living his best life. I couldn't resist. I made an account and upvoted it. That evening, Mason came over again with a 6-pack, because apparently our friendship now ran on schadenfreude and beer. So what's the next move? He asked. Move. I said, there is no move. The game's already over. I won without playing. He laughed. You're handling this like a Bond villain. Nah, I said. More like a retired superhero who doesn't come out of retirement unless it's tax deductible. We sat there on the balcony, watching the sunset, trading jokes about karma's impeccable timing. Mason said, you think she'll try to come back again? I shrugged. Probably. But if she does, she'll find out my heart's under new management. Damn, he said. You rehearsed that line, didn't you? Since the jewelry refund cleared. Later that night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard the faint ping of another message. I glanced at the phone. Another unknown number. I sighed, unlocked it, and read, Jamie won't talk to me. His wife called me a home-wrecking gold digger. I don't know what to do. I wiped my mouth, stared at the screen, and said out loud, you could start by taking accountability. But that's probably not in your skill set. Then I deleted it. Not blocked, deleted. Blocking would have been an acknowledgement. Deleting was indifference. The next day, I woke up feeling like I'd slept through a thunderstorm and woken up in clear weather. It's funny how fast peace returns when you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. At work, HR was gossip-proofing like crazy, official memos about professional boundaries and office relationships. My boss, Greg, called me into his office. Hey man, he said, closing the door. I just wanted to check in. I heard about you know. I smiled. You mean the corporate soap opera starring my ex and her boss? He chuckled awkwardly. Yeah, that. You holding up okay? Never better, I said. Turns out betrayal is great for productivity. I finished 3 reports before 10 a.m. Greg nodded. Good attitude. For what it's worth, everyone's on your side. Appreciate it, I said. Tell them I accept sympathy in the form of paid leave. He laughed. Get back to work, Bennett. By the end of the day, I had a dozen unread texts, most of them from unknown numbers that I assumed were Lily's new burner phones. The final one made me snort aloud. I made a mistake leaving you. Jamie ruined everything. I just wish you'd talk to me. I typed a reply just to get it out of my system. Talk to you about what? The weather? The thunderstorm of your own making. Then I deleted it again. Silence was the only language I wanted to speak. That night, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and scrolled through old photos one last time. Not to reminisce, just to delete. Each swipe was like clearing browser history on a bad life decision. Our vacation in Miami? Gone. Her birthday dinner? Gone. The selfie we took outside the jewelry store? Double gone. By the end, my gallery looked like a man who'd never heard of Lily in his life. That's when I realized I didn't hate her. Hate takes energy. I was just done. Emotionally logged out. Sometime around midnight, Mason texted me again. Just saw a post. Jamie's wife filed for divorce and is suing him for misuse of company funds. I grinned. So the sequel's better than the original. Dude, he said, you need to write a book about this. Already living it, I replied. Working title, The Promotion She Didn't Deserve. Before bed, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere across town, Lily was probably crying in a motel room, realizing her boss wasn't her happily ever after, but her exit interview from Common Sense. And for the first time since that infamous phone call, I felt completely free. Not angry, not bitter, just untethered. It's weird, the moment you stop wanting closure. You realize it's not something they give you. It's something you give yourself when you stop replaying the scene. She'd made her choices, and life was cashing those checks with interest. I finished my drink, raised the glass to the window, and said softly, to Jamie's wife, may her lawyer be ruthless. Then I laughed, turned off the lights, and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the blinds, the smell of fresh coffee, and the distinct feeling that the worst part of my life had quietly packed up and moved out. My phone buzzed one more time, a final text from Lily. I just wish things could go back to how they were. I stared at it, smiled, and typed one last message before deleting her number for good. They did, for me. A week after the whole Jamie's married revelation, I was back to what I now called post-chaos normal. My mornings were quiet again. My coffee maker didn't sound like it was competing with someone's hairdryer, and my living room didn't smell like Sephora exploded. Life was finally stable, which, of course, meant the universe was about to test that. It happened on a Tuesday, because bad news never respects weekends. I got to work early, ready to impress my boss by existing, when I saw a plain white envelope sitting on my desk. No postage, just my name written in handwriting that looked like cursive met caffeine withdrawal. I flipped it over, and there it was, certified mail. Now, I don't know if you've ever received a certified letter at work, but it's basically the adult version of we need to talk. Nothing good ever comes in one. Either you're being sued, audited, or, in my case, haunted by your ex with access to a post office. I tore it open, expecting divorce papers I didn't need, or maybe a bill for emotional damages. Instead, it was 3 handwritten pages, soap opera penmanship, hearts over the eyes, dramatic loops on the Ys. I didn't even need to read the signature. I could smell the regret through the ink. Oliver, it began, I never meant for things to happen this way. You abandoned me in my time of need. That line almost made me spit out my coffee. I abandoned her. Ma'am, you moved out with a duffel bag and a boss who already had a wife. I kept reading because sometimes stupidity deserves an audience. Please pay for my hotel until I get back on my feet. We should go to couples therapy to heal this betrayal. This betrayal. Not her betrayal, mine. I had to reread that part just to make sure my brain wasn't experiencing lag. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or frame the letter as a piece of performance art. It was like reading a script written by someone who'd slept through reality. I walked straight to the break room where my friend Ryan, our office's resident lawyer/sarcasm supplier, was pouring coffee. I slid the letter toward him like it was evidence in a criminal trial. Read this, I said. He started reading. His face changed expressions faster than a malfunctioning emoji keyboard. By paragraph 2, he was wheezing. "Oh my God," he said between laughs. "If I die laughing, you can sue her for emotional distress." "Is this not insanity?" I asked. Ryan held up a hand, still chuckling. "This is gold, man. You don't respond to this, you archive it. One day Netflix will call, and you'll need this for the writer's room." We kept the letter. I folded it neatly, put it in a folder labeled Evidence for the Biopic, and slipped it into my desk drawer. Because honestly, who knows? Maybe one day I'll sell the movie rights. The promotion she didn't expect, based on poor life choices. The rest of the day went by uneventfully, except for the fact that I couldn't stop thinking about how someone could twist reality so hard it snapped. I mean, she really believed I owed her something. As if heartbreak came with alimony. Around 6 p.m., I got home, dropped my keys on the counter, and saw another letter slipped under my door. Not certified this time, but the handwriting was the same. Round 2. I muttered, tearing it open. "Oliver," it began again. Apparently, introspection wasn't her strong suit. "I forgive you for how you treated me." Forgive me. This woman had the nerve to turn my peace into a confessional. "I know you acted out of pain. I still believe we're meant to be. God has a plan for us." I stared at the paper. God might have a plan, but I was pretty sure it didn't involve me Venmoing her hotel bill. Halfway through, she mentioned how lonely she was and how this baby deserves a father figure with integrity. That one almost made me snort my drink. Integrity? Lady, you cheated with your married boss. I'm not the integrity fairy. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to Ryan and Mason with one caption: "The sequel no one asked for." Mason replied, "Tell her to send it by FedEx next time so it feels more official." Ryan sent back, "Frame it. Title it, Certified Delusion." By the next day, it wasn't just letters. It was voicemails. Long ones. Emotional ones. Some started with crying, some ended with accusations. One of them went, "Oliver, I saw your car at the diner. Were you with someone?" I was a cheeseburger, but I didn't think that counted as infidelity. She left 7 messages in 2 days, each progressively more dramatic than the last. I started rating them like podcasts. Episode 1, The Lonely Hotel. 3 stars, solid emotional delivery, lacks self-awareness. Episode 2, The Father of Integrity. 2 stars, repetitive plot. Episode 3, The Universe is Testing Me. 1 star, weak ending, too much crying. By the time episode 7 dropped, I was considering charging a subscription fee. At lunch on Thursday, Ryan and I were at our favorite spot downtown, the kind of place that serves burgers big enough to solve emotional problems. I told him about the voicemails, and he shook his head. "You know what this is?" he said. "Classic deflection. She's rewriting the narrative because she can't handle being the villain." "Then she should have picked a different genre," I said. "I'm not signing up for a redemption arc." He laughed. "Man, you should start a podcast, Letters from My Ex, a cautionary tale. Season 1 sponsored by Common Sense," I said, which she clearly ran out of. When I got home that night, there was a 3rd letter waiting. No envelope this time, just folded and tucked into my mailbox like a teenage breakup note. I opened it, bracing myself. "Oliver, I saw your friend Mason's post. Are you mocking me online?" I laughed so hard I almost dropped it. Mason had posted a meme earlier that said, "When your ex leaves you for her boss, but ends up jobless and homeless." That's not heartbreak, that's a plot twist. I guess subtlety wasn't our strong suit. The letter went on for 2 pages about public humiliation and privacy violations. Then it ended with, "If you have any decency left, help me get through this pregnancy." I folded it neatly and muttered, "I have decency, just not amnesia." The next morning, I stopped by the post office on my way to work. The clerk looked bored, probably thinking I was mailing bills or tax forms. Nope. I handed him a plain envelope addressed to Lily's Motel. Inside, 1 note, return to sender. Sincerely, Common Sense. For the rest of the week, I didn't hear from her. It was weird, like the calm after a hurricane, where you're not sure if it's really over or if the storm's just reloading. But on Saturday morning, another certified letter showed up. Apparently, she'd found a bulk discount on emotional postage. This one was shorter and even more dramatic. "I'm leaving town," she wrote. "You'll never hear from me again. You win." I smiled, sipped my coffee, and whispered, "Finally, a victory speech." But of course, the last line killed the vibe. "Unless you want to talk before I go." Of course she had to add that. Drama never exits quietly. It always leaves the door cracked open. I didn't respond. Didn't call. Didn't text. I just went about my weekend like a man who'd passed a difficult exam. I even went grocery shopping, something I'd avoided because that store was full of Lily's ghosts. But this time, it was different. No sadness. No nostalgia. Just me, buying steak, beer, and freedom. Sunday afternoon, Mason and Ryan came over to watch the game. Mason spotted the stack of letters on my counter and said, "Damn, bro, she's building a paper trail." "Yeah," I said, "a trail straight to irrelevance." Ryan picked one up, reading aloud dramatically. "We should go to therapy to heal this betrayal," he laughed. "Man, if this were a movie, the audience would boo her." "Exactly," I said. "This isn't therapy. It's public relations." Mason cracked open a beer. "So, what are you going to do with all of them?" "Keep them," I said. Proof that I survived the human equivalent of a pop-up ad. They both laughed, and for a moment, the air in my apartment felt lighter than it had in months. I realized that while she was writing chapters of regret, I was writing a new story, one with peace, beer, and people who actually understood boundaries. When they left that night, I stood by my window, watching the streetlights flicker against the quiet neighborhood. Somewhere out there, Lily was still writing letters, still spinning her version of events. But it didn't matter, because I wasn't her audience anymore. I raised my glass one last time and said softly, "Certified received, drama returned to sender." And with that, I finally, officially, closed the chapter. Wednesday evening began innocently enough. I just finished microwaving leftover Chinese food that had definitely seen better days and was halfway through an episode of Better Call Saul when my doorbell rang. At first, I assumed it was a delivery. Maybe Mason had finally ordered that dumb, "congratulations on your emotional maturity" cake he'd been threatening to send me. But when I glanced at the doorbell camera, the universe rewarded me with an encore performance from my favorite recurring sitcom characters, Lily's parents, Martin and Elaine, aka the ghosts of poor decisions past. I froze, chopsticks midair. They looked exactly how I remembered. Martin in his ever-present golf sweater even though it was 75 degrees, and Elaine wearing pearls big enough to pick up satellite signals. The two of them stood on my porch like Jehovah's Witnesses for guilt. I muttered, "Oh God, they've come to reclaim the warranty on their defective daughter." I opened the door a cautious 3 inches, enough to establish dominance, but not enough for them to wedge in emotionally. Martin smiled that awkward, trying to be reasonable smile. "Oliver, can we come in for a moment?" I gave him the look of a man evaluating whether forgiveness was tax-deductible. "Depends. Is this a social call or an intervention?" Elaine answered for him, voice trembling like she'd practiced this monologue in the car. "Oliver, she's pregnant. She's scared. She has nowhere to go." I sighed theatrically. "Elaine, she's pregnant and employed. Scared, maybe. Homeless, no? That's a personal budget issue." Martin stepped forward, hands raised like a hostage negotiator. "Son, we're not here to start a fight. We just think you could show a little compassion." "Compassion?" I repeated, leaning on the doorframe. "Martin, your daughter left me for her married boss and now wants me to fund her maternity leave. Compassion's in short supply this fiscal year." Elaine gasped like I'd just kicked a puppy. "How dare you speak about the mother of your unborn child like that?" I blinked. "Whoa, let's stop right there, Broadway. That's not my unborn child. That's Jamie's unpaid internship." Her eyes went wide, and I swear if indignation were a sport, she'd have broken a record. "You men are all the same," she hissed. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "please don't lump me in with your son-in-law's boss's boyfriend. I'm just trying to watch Netflix." Martin sighed. "Look, Oliver, we know mistakes were made." "Plural, yes," I interrupted. "And one of them's still wearing waterproof mascara somewhere in a motel." Elaine stomped her heel. "You think this is funny?" "Honestly," I said, scratching my chin. "A little. Tragic comedy, really. Somewhere between Maury and Shark Tank." She turned to her husband, whispering, "He's heartless." Martin, to his credit, still tried diplomacy. "Oliver, maybe you two could talk it out. You had something good once." "Martin, the only thing we had in common was a Wi-Fi plan and matching toothbrushes, both of which are canceled." Elaine crossed her arms. "You'll regret this coldness one day." I smiled politely. Not as much as Lily regrets leaving me for a guy with a LinkedIn bio that starts with visionary. 30 minutes. That's how long they stayed. 30 full minutes of emotional spam. Pleading, scolding, guilt-tripping, looping back around to pleading again. I swear Elaine changed tactics like a telemarketer on commission. At one point, she even tried religion. What would Jesus do? She demanded. Probably not co-sign an Audi for adultery, I said. That one earned me a gasp loud enough to set off nearby car alarms. Martin tugged her arm. Let's go, honey. He's not ready. Translation, he's not buying what we're selling. When they finally retreated down the porch steps, I leaned against the doorway and raised my glass of water in salute. Cheers to boundaries, I said to the security camera. The camera blinked back, silently judging me, but I felt like I'd just defended the Alamo of personal peace. I went back inside, sat down, and realized my Chinese food was cold. Didn't even matter. The satisfaction was a meal in itself. About 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Text from Mason. Dude, saw a Facebook post from Lily's mom. You've officially been promoted to devil incarnate. I opened the link. Sure enough, Elaine had written a post that read like a Lifetime movie synopsis. My daughter's ex has turned his back on her in her time of need. Pregnant, abandoned, yet still strong. The comments section was pure chaos. Men these days have no hearts. Prayers for Lily. Stay strong, mama. I almost replied with, stay strong, just not in my living room. Instead, I screenshotted it for my growing digital scrapbook of delusion. Thursday morning at work, Ryan slid a coffee across my desk. Heard the in-laws made landfall. Yup, I said. They tried diplomacy. I countered with sarcasm. Successful mission? Complete. No casualties except maybe their faith in humanity. He laughed. You realize you're in the eye of a drama hurricane, right? Yeah, I said, sipping the coffee. But I built my house out of indifference. By noon, my phone started buzzing again. Not Lily this time, but mutual friends. Apparently, the parental pity tour had gone mobile. Elaine was calling anyone who'd ever liked one of our engagement photos. She's telling people you locked a pregnant woman out of your house, Ryan said, scrolling through his phone. I shrugged. Technically true. I locked a pregnant cheater out of my house. Context matters. He smirked. You ever think about going public? Set the record straight. No need, I said. The truth's like daylight. It shows up eventually. That night, though, I couldn't help imagining the dinner conversation at Casa Thompson. Elaine stirring her soup with righteous fury, Martin nodding like a hostage, Lily dabbing fake tears while scrolling through baby name apps for sympathy clicks. I could practically hear it. Mom, he won't even answer my calls. Sweetheart, men are weak. Dad, say something. Martin, pass the salt. The visual made me chuckle mid-beer. Friday evening, I came home from work to find a small box on my porch. No return address. For a moment, I thought, please tell me she didn't send me a baby announcement already. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a framed photo of Lily and me at our engagement shoot, smiling like two idiots who believed in happily ever after. The note taped to the back read, "Don't forget what you had." I stared at it for a good 10 seconds before tossing it straight into the recycling bin. Already recycled, I said out loud. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from Martin. Oliver, I just want to say, Elaine's a little emotional. We just want peace. Maybe when the baby's born, you'll feel differently. I hit replay just to make sure I'd heard that right. When the baby's born, you'll feel differently. That was rich. The only thing I'd feel differently about when that baby arrived was gratitude that diapers weren't my financial problem. Saturday morning, I decided to drive out to the farmer's market, cleanse the aura, buy overpriced honey, pretend I was thriving. While browsing tomatoes, I ran into someone who'd gone to church with Elaine. She gave me the pity look. We're all praying for Lily, she said gently. She's been through so much. I smiled. Me too, I said. Every night I pray she learns about accountability before her next relationship. The woman blinked, unsure whether I was serious, and walked away muttering something about bitterness. By Sunday, the phone calls finally stopped. Maybe they'd run out of emotional gas. Or maybe Martin had realized the futility of reasoning with a man who answered guilt trips with punchlines. I spent the afternoon cleaning, blasting music, and feeling a strange mix of peace and absurd amusement. That's when I saw it. One last text. From Elaine, of course. I hope you can live with yourself. I typed back. Oh, I sleep great. Thanks for checking. Then I hit send, blocked her number, and felt like I'd just deleted malware from my life. That evening, Mason swung by with 2 beers and his usual smirk. So the in-laws paid a visit, huh? Yep. Full parade. Trumpets, banners, emotional guilt confetti. How'd you handle it? Like a pro, I said. Polite tone, clear boundaries, light sarcasm. He grinned. That's your holy trinity. We clinked bottles, watched the game, and by halftime I realized something profound. The less I engaged with their drama, the smaller it got. Their narrative only thrived when I fed it energy, and I was officially on an emotional diet. Later, after Mason left, I stood by my window again, my unofficial therapy spot, and thought about how weirdly freeing it felt to say no. People act like refusing chaos makes you cruel, but honestly, it's the kindest thing you can do for yourself. Somewhere out there, Lily's parents were probably still rehearsing their speeches, blaming me for everything from climate change to their daughter's poor judgment. Let them. I'd learned something better than revenge. Apathy with a good night's sleep. Before heading to bed, I poured a final drink, raised it toward the doorbell camera, and toasted quietly. To Martin and Elaine. May their next son-in-law come with a return policy. Then I took a sip, turned off the lights, and laughed softly to myself. Because that was the real victory. Not the silence, not the block numbers, not even the peace. The real victory was knowing I didn't need to explain my side anymore. The truth had already packed its bags and was marching proudly behind them in their little parade. Thursday morning dawned with that weird, glassy kind of sunlight that makes everything look cleaner than it is, like the world got power washed overnight by a very efficient angel with a hose. I woke up before my alarm, which either meant I was finally healing or my brain had decided sleep was for people who hadn't recently audited their relationships. Coffee, shower, fresh t-shirt, gym bag, boom. I was out the door with the confident stride of a man who'd changed all the passwords and slept like it. My gym isn't fancy, which is exactly why I love it. No eucalyptus towels, no influencer ring lights, no guy named Skylar selling powdered moon dust at the counter. Just iron, rubber, loud music, carpet that's seen things, and a front desk guy named Pete who looks like he could bench press a Ford Focus and then apologize for being in the way. I scanned in, shared the universal nod with the morning regulars, and headed to the rack for squats because nothing says therapy like putting your problems on a bar and standing up with them until your thighs file a complaint with HR. I had just finished my second set when I felt it. The change in air pressure that warns you a storm is building behind you. I re-racked the bar, turned, and there she was by the treadmills like a plot twist in overpriced leggings. Lily, belly visible, ponytail too tight, eyes already shining with that watery film people use when they're about to ask for what they're not owed. The playlist switched songs right then, as if a DJ in heaven selected drama, extended mix. She approached like a diplomat crossing a demilitarized zone. Oliver, just listen to me for 5 minutes, she said, breath hitching, volume calibrated to draw sympathy from distant cardio machines. I glanced at the clock above the mirrors, nodded once, and said, "You've got 3. Timer's running." A couple of dudes doing curls pretended not to eavesdrop with the focus of undercover agents. "I made a mistake," she said. "Jamie lied. He's married. He's a coward. He ghosted me. And I'm—" She gestured at her belly as if I might have missed the headline. "I'm trying to fix my life." "I believe you," I said and meant it. "I just don't believe on the fix." "You're cruel," she whispered, like an actress testing the microphone. "You changed the locks. You canceled everything. I felt like I didn't exist." "You do exist," I said. "Just not on my accounts." She flinched like the truth had sharp corners. "We shared a life. We shared a lease and a playlist," I said. "The life part requires honesty." Her jaw set. "So that's it. You're just going to lift weights and pretend none of this matters." "Not pretending," I said, grabbing my water bottle. I processed. "Now I'm squatting." She blinked at that, thrown off by the normalcy of it, like she expected violins, not chalk dust. "I'm scared," she said. "I don't have anywhere stable. My parents are unbearable. Jamie's wife threatened a restraining order if I text again. I keep waking up at 3 a.m. thinking I can't breathe." There it was. The tiny human truth under all the mess. For a moment, compassion flickered like a dashboard light. I wasn't made of stone. I was just done being used for heat. I lowered my voice. "I believe you're scared. I also believe you put yourself in the passenger seat of a car with no brakes because the driver promised great views. Her eyes watered. I loved you. If that was love, I said gently, then love needs a better training program. She studied my face for a long second, maybe searching for the boy who used to bring her coffee and fix her LinkedIn typos. What happened to the guy who would have done anything for me? He learned the word no, I said. Turns out it's a full sentence. Pete wandered by, offered a cautious, everything okay here, like a bouncer at a poetry slam. I nodded. Lily sniffed, waved him away. We're fine, she said, and Pete hovered just long enough to make it clear he'd be nearby if Fine changed its mind. Can you at least help me for a little while? She asked. Just until I'm stable. Pay the motel for 2 weeks. I'll figure the rest out. I wiped my hands on a towel and made myself say it plain, with no cleverness to hide behind. No, Lily, I'm not your emergency fund. I'm not your backup husband. I'm not the guy you come back to when the music stops. She inhaled sharply. I never thought you could be this cold. I'm not cold, I said. I'm done being warm to people who set fires. A trainer across the room yelled, "Drive through your heels," at a client, and the phrase echoed inside me. Heels. Yes. I rooted mine to the rubber floor. You need to talk to HR, I added. Yours, not mine. Talk to a lawyer. Make a plan. Get receipts. And stop turning your consequences into my responsibilities. Her lip trembled. I wanted a family. And I wanted a partner, I said. We both made wishes. Only one of us stole the coins. She stared at me with an anger that felt like grief wearing armor. So that's it. You're going to watch me suffer. I'm going to watch you grow, I said. Suffering is the part you can't skip. She laughed once, small and bitter. You're different. I'm honest, I said, which probably feels different. We stood in that fluorescent stalemate while the room breathed around us. Plates clanking, ropes slapping, fans humming their industrial lullaby. She finally said, I can't go to another gym. This one's close to my doctor. I'm not banning you from fitness, I said. I'm asking you to respect my peace. So you'll ignore me? She said. I will outwork the urge to respond, I said. It's a muscle. I'm training it. Something in her posture sagged, the fight draining like air from a tire. Do you ever think about the baby? She asked, quiet, almost childlike. Every time I choose mercy over revenge, I said. I don't drag your name online. I don't tell my mother the worst stories. I don't send those screenshots to your aunt. That's me thinking about the baby, keeping the world a fraction softer than I want to. She looked startled at that, like she hadn't considered restraint as a gift. Then help me, she said, one last Hail Mary. Please. I am helping, I said. I'm telling you the truth to your face. She wiped her cheeks, annoyed with her own tears. You sound like a therapist. Can't afford one, I said. Spent my refund on dumbbells. That almost made her smile, and for a second the past wobbled into focus. Movie nights, chilly Sundays, the way she used to tuck her feet under my thigh when she was cold. I let the image come and go like a stretch I wasn't keeping. Okay, she said finally, voice scraped thin. I get it. You won't help. I won't rescue, I said. Different verb. She nodded, a stiff little motion of surrender, and turned toward the treadmills like a soldier dismissed. Halfway there, she pivoted back. One more thing, she said. Why are you so calm? Because I rehearsed this scene in my head 100 times, I said. And in every version, I picked me. She held my gaze, then gave the barest nod and walked away. I watched her step onto a treadmill, press buttons with the jittery decisiveness of someone trying to outrun a feeling, and I went back to the rack. The bar felt heavier, of course it did. Clarity always weighs more than hope. I chalked my hands, ducked under, lifted, and thought about form. On the fourth set, Pete drifted close again. You good, man? He asked softly. I'm better than I used to be, I said. Which is the whole point of this place, right? He grinned. Progress over ego, he said, patting the rack. Let me know if you need a spot. Between sets, I watched the room the way you do when your heart has calmed down enough to see other people again. A woman deadlifting her body weight like she'd made an appointment with gravity and refused to be late. An older guy on the rower, keeping time with quiet dignity. Two teens laughing too loud and learning what their bones were built for. Life, stubborn and sweaty, going on. I moved to pull-ups, then farmer's carries, letting the work rinse whatever residue the conversation left behind. By the time I hit the sled, breath coming in organized fires, I felt like a person with edges again. Lily had shifted to a slow incline walk, eyes on some far point only she could see. Good. Let her stare at the horizon. Everybody needs one. That was enough. 3 months after the gym showdown of the century, life had finally gone quiet enough that I could hear my own thoughts again, and they sounded suspiciously like smooth jazz. No surprise visits, no handwritten manifestos, no late-night voicemails demanding closure. Just me, my coffee, and an ever-expanding playlist called Songs for People Who Dodged a Bullet. Things were good. So, naturally, that's when karma decided to drop by wearing heels and holding receipts. It started with a text from Mason. "Bro, you sitting down?" I replied, "It's 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Define sitting." He sent a screenshot of a social media post from a coworker at Lily's old company. Apparently, Jamie's wife kicked him out, and HR is launching an investigation. Below it, a blurry picture of Jamie hauling cardboard boxes to a Camry that looked as tired as his soul. Caption: "Corporate scandal hits our office again, #leadership goals." I laughed so hard I almost spilled my coffee. Almost. See, karma doesn't send you an email first. It just quietly sits in the corner, waiting for the right dramatic lighting. And when it shows up deluxe edition. Jamie's wife had apparently gone full detective mode, found out about the affair and the company funds he used for business dinners, and decided her next move was divorce plus public humiliation. According to Mason, she'd even changed the locks and spray-painted Team Wife on the garage door. Subtle? No. Satisfying? Absolutely. Meanwhile, Lily's world was collapsing faster than a cheap lawn chair. She'd lost the apartment Jamie had been paying for, the Audi got repossessed, because of course it did, and she moved back in with her parents. Remember Elaine and Martin, the self-appointed moral police? Yeah. Apparently they weren't thrilled about their daughter turning their guest room into a maternity ward/pity party. She'd posted a new profile picture anyway, her hand on her baby bump, captioned, "Strong women rise from ashes." Except the ashes were unpaid bills. By lunchtime, I was neck-deep in the group chat with Mason and Ryan, giving play-by-play commentary like it was the Super Bowl of regret. Mason: "Dude, she sold the Audi sound system on Marketplace for $150. Ryan: "She's posting cryptic quotes like, 'People change when you stop funding their Netflix.'" Me: "Poetic. Tragic. Budget-friendly." Of course, I told myself I was above it all, that I didn't care, but come on. If Karma were a TV show, you'd watch every episode. I made popcorn. Around 6 p.m. that night, Mason called, voice still shaking with secondhand amusement. "Bro, Jamie just posted on LinkedIn. He wrote an entire article about resilience through adversity." I spit my drink. "You mean he cheated, lost his job, and turned it into a motivational post?" Mason read it out loud. "Sometimes life challenges you to grow beyond your comfort zone. I'm grateful for the lessons pain teaches." I groaned. So he's basically rebranding as the Dalai Lama of bad decisions. Mason snorted. His wife commented, "Glad you're learning something." 10,000 likes. That night, I sat on my balcony with a beer, watching the city lights blink like the universe was in on the joke. It hit me that I didn't even feel vengeful anymore, just weirdly grateful. You spend months thinking you'll never get justice, and then one day you realize justice has a great sense of timing. 2 weeks later, I ran into Zoe, Lily's sister, at a coffee shop. I was mid-order when I heard the icy voice behind me. Wow, guess karma has favorites. I turned, smiled. "Zoe, hey, still doing that Defend the Indefensible tour?" She rolled her eyes. "You're so smug." "Not smug," I said. "Just well-rested." She snapped. "She's been through hell. She doesn't deserve this." I took my coffee from the barista, leaned on the counter, and said, "Deserve is a big word. Maybe save it for people who don't steal company cars for team-building activities." Zoe scoffed. "You think you're better than her." "No," I said. "I just think I'm better off." Then I smiled politely and walked out, leaving her to argue with the foam on her latte. But apparently, the universe had decided I'd had enough peace and quiet for one evening, because as I was browsing flight options, my phone started blowing up with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, and then I saw that Melissa had posted something new on social media, and from the preview notification alone, I could tell this was going to be a special kind of dramatic. I clicked on it, and there it was, the black dress photo shoot, posted at 11 p.m. on what was supposed to have been the night before our wedding. The social media post was exactly the kind of performative grief I'd come to expect from Melissa at this point. A carefully staged photo of her in a little black dress, sitting on her bed with perfectly arranged mood lighting that suggested she'd spent at least an hour getting the shot just right. The caption was a novel-length meditation on lost love and broken dreams, complete with poetry quotes and hashtags about healing and moving forward. It was the digital equivalent of those Victorian mourning portraits, except instead of mourning a dead spouse, she was mourning a wedding she'd torpedoed herself. I scrolled through the comments, which were predictably full of supportive friends telling her how strong she was and how she deserved better, and I was about to close the app and go back to looking at Iceland flights when my doorbell rang. At 11 p.m. on a Thursday night, I looked at my phone, looked at the door, and felt this sense of weary resignation wash over me, because I knew exactly who was standing on the other side of that door, and I knew this was going to be exhausting. I walked to the door, looked through the peephole to confirm my suspicions, and there she was, Melissa, wearing that same little black dress from the photo shoot, which meant she'd taken the pictures, posted them online, and then immediately driven to my apartment for what I assumed was going to be one final dramatic gesture. I stood there for a moment debating whether to even open the door, because I was tired, emotionally drained from the conversation with Robert, and really not in the mood for whatever performance Melissa had planned. But I also knew she wasn't going to leave. She'd just keep ringing the doorbell or knocking or eventually call the cops claiming I'd stolen something from her apartment, so I might as well get this over with. I unlocked the door, opened it but kept the chain on, and looked at her through the 3-inch gap. "It's 11 p.m., Melissa," I said flatly. "What do you want?" She looked up at me, and I could see she'd been crying again, her makeup artfully smudged in a way that looked almost intentional, like she'd carefully cultivated the look of a heartbroken woman from Maximum Impact. "Tomorrow was supposed to be our day," she said softly, her voice taking on that breathy quality she used when she was trying to be vulnerable and appealing. I didn't respond, just stood there looking at her through the gap in the door, waiting for whatever speech she'd rehearsed on the drive over. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she continued, and I noticed she was swaying slightly, which suggested she'd maybe had a few drinks before deciding this late-night visit was a good idea. "About us, about everything that happened, about what I want." She paused dramatically, clearly expecting me to ask what she wanted, but I remained silent, and the silence stretched between us like a rubber band pulled tight. "Logan chose Ashley," she finally said, and there was genuine hurt in her voice now, the kind that wasn't performed or calculated but actually real. "He told me we needed space, that our friendship was too complicated, that he couldn't handle being in the middle of all this drama anymore." And I realized something. She looked up at me with those big eyes that had probably gotten her out of trouble her entire life, and I could see her trying to gauge whether her words were landing. "I realized that I lost you over someone who didn't even want me. I threw away 4 years with a good man because I was holding on to some fantasy about my ex-boyfriend, and now I don't have either of you." It was probably the most self-aware thing I'd heard her say in the entire time I'd known her, and if she'd come to this realization maybe a month ago, we might have had a different conversation. But standing there at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, a day before what would have been our wedding, listening to her confess that she'd torpedoed our relationship for a guy who'd now dumped her, I felt absolutely nothing. "I'm sorry," she said, and a tear rolled down her cheek in a way that looked cinematic, perfectly timed, and I wondered if she'd practiced this in the mirror before coming over. "I'm so sorry, Adrian. I made a mistake, a huge mistake, and I want to fix it. I want us to fix it. We can postpone the wedding, give ourselves time to work through this, go to couples therapy, whatever you need. Just please, please don't give up on us." She reached through the gap in the door like she was going to touch my hand, and I took a step back automatically. "Melissa," I said, and my voice was so calm it surprised even me. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose Logan over me, over our relationship, over our future together. The only reason you're here now is because Logan rejected you, and you're looking for a backup plan." Her face crumpled, and I could see her trying to formulate an argument, some way to spin what I'd just said into something that made her look less calculating. "That's not fair," she said, her voice rising slightly. "I'm here because I love you, because I realized what I lost." "No," I interrupted, and I felt something shift in my chest, something final and definitive. You're here because you lost Logan and you're scared of being alone. If Logan had welcomed you with open arms, if he'd offered to help you pay that $5,000 you owe me, if he'd validated your feelings and told you I was the bad guy, you wouldn't be standing here right now. You'd be with him, continuing whatever emotional affair you've been having for months. I watched her face cycle through shock, denial, and then anger as she realized I knew more than she'd thought I knew. Ashley told you, she said accusingly, and I almost laughed at how quickly she'd jumped to that conclusion. Ashley sent me the screenshots. I confirmed. Of your texts with Logan. All of them. The ones where you talked about missing him, wondering what your life would have been like if he hadn't cheated, needing him at the wedding for closure. All of it, Melissa. I've seen all of it. The color drained from her face, and I watched her try to figure out how to salvage this situation now that she knew I had evidence of what had really been going on. Those texts were taken out of context, she started, but her heart wasn't in it, and we both knew it was a weak defense. Adrian, please, just let me explain, but I was done. Done with the drama, done with the manipulation, done with the emotional chess games and the ultimatums and the constant feeling that I was competing with a ghost from her past. There's nothing to explain, I said, and I started to close the door. You loved Logan more than you loved me. Or at least you loved the idea of Logan more than you loved our actual relationship. And that's fine, Melissa. You're allowed to have those feelings. But you're not allowed to expect me to just accept them and marry you anyway. She started crying in earnest now, the kind of ugly crying that wasn't performed or staged, and she grabbed the doorframe like she could physically prevent me from closing the door. Please don't do this, she begged, and there was real desperation in her voice. Please, Adrian. I can change. I'll cut Logan out completely. I'll never talk to him again. Just please give me another chance. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt this overwhelming sense of sadness mixed with relief. Sadness for what we'd had and lost, for the future we'd planned that would never happen, for the woman I'd thought she was who'd turned out to be someone completely different. But also relief that I was seeing this now, before the wedding, before we'd legally bound ourselves together, before I'd spent years of my life trying to compete with a man she couldn't let go of. I'm not giving you another chance, Melissa, I said quietly. Not because I don't think people can change, but because I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if you're really over Logan or if you're just better at hiding your feelings for him. She opened her mouth to argue, to plead, to try one more angle, but I continued before she could speak. You gave me an ultimatum about Logan being in our wedding. I called your bluff and canceled everything. Now you're here because Logan doesn't want you and you've realized that maybe I wasn't such a bad option after all. But I'm not a backup plan, Melissa. I'm not a consolation prize for when your first choice doesn't work out. I'm someone who deserves to be someone's actual first choice, not their safe option when the exciting choice falls through. I could see understanding dawning on her face, the realization that this really was over, that there was no combination of words or tears or late-night visits that was going to change my mind. Tomorrow was supposed to be our wedding day, she said softly, one last attempt to appeal to nostalgia or sentimentality or whatever emotion she thought might crack my resolve. Yeah, it was, I agreed. But you canceled it when you decided Logan was more important than I was. I just made it official. I gently but firmly pushed her hand off the doorframe, and she let go without resistance, like all the fight had suddenly drained out of her. Good night, Melissa, I said, and I meant it with a finality that made it clear this was goodbye, not just for tonight, but forever. I closed the door, locked it, and stood there listening to her cry on the other side for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only about 30 seconds. Then I heard her footsteps, slow and heavy, walking away from my door and presumably back to her car. I walked to my window and looked out into the parking lot, watching her sit in her car with her head on the steering wheel, her shoulders shaking with sobs, and I felt that same mix of sadness and relief wash over me again. I stood there watching her for about 20 minutes, half concerned she might do something stupid and half just making sure she actually left, and eventually, she started her car and drove away, her taillights disappearing into the night. I went back to my couch, picked up my phone, and looked at the Iceland flight prices again, and this time I didn't just browse, I actually booked one. I selected a date 2 weeks out, picked a hotel that advertised Northern Lights tours, and entered my credit card information with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. The confirmation email arrived in my inbox, and I stared at it for a moment. This tangible proof that I was moving forward, that I was choosing myself and my own happiness over the toxic dynamic I'd been stuck in. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother. Just saw Melissa's Instagram post. You okay? I typed back. Better than I've been in a long time, actually. Also, I'm going to Iceland. He sent back a string of celebration emojis and a message saying he was proud of me, which was unexpectedly touching and made me realize how lucky I was to have family who actually supported healthy boundaries. I turned off my phone, took a long shower, and climbed into bed feeling lighter than I had in months. Tomorrow would have been my wedding day, the culmination of months of planning and thousands of dollars and countless hours of stress about seating charts and centerpieces and whether the chicken or the fish was the better entree option. Instead, I'd be going to work, living my normal life, and looking forward to a trip to Iceland that I was taking just for me, funded by the money Robert had given me as an apology for his daughter's behavior. As I drifted off to sleep, my last thought was that sometimes the best decision you can make is the one that costs you something in the short term, but saves you everything in the long term. I'd lost a fiancé, sure, but I gained my self-respect, my freedom, and the knowledge that I wasn't willing to settle for a relationship where I had to compete with someone's ex for their attention and affection. That seemed like a pretty good trade to me, all things considered. The next day, what would have been my wedding day, I woke up at 7 a.m. feeling weirdly peaceful. No stress about whether the flowers would arrive on time. No anxiety about whether Uncle Frank would get drunk and hit on the bridesmaids. No last-minute panic about my vows, or whether I'd remember to put on deodorant before the ceremony. Just a regular Saturday morning with absolutely nothing planned except existing as a free man. I made coffee, scrolled through my phone while deliberately avoiding social media, because I was not about to check if Melissa had posted some melodramatic message about what should have been happening today. And then my brother texted me. Fishing trip. You. Me. The lake. Be ready in an hour. I didn't argue, just pulled on jeans and a t-shirt, grabbed my baseball cap, and waited for him to pick me up. We spent the entire day at the lake, sitting in his beat-up fishing boat drinking beer and catching absolutely nothing, which was perfect because the fishing was never really the point anyway. My brother didn't bring up Melissa once, didn't ask if I was okay, or if I wanted to talk about my feelings, or any of that emotional processing stuff. He just handed me beers, made stupid jokes about the fish being too smart to fall for our clearly inferior bait, and let the silence be comfortable instead of awkward. It was exactly what I needed, just hours of peace and normalcy, and remembering that life existed outside of wedding drama and relationship implosions. By the time we packed up and headed back, I felt more relaxed than I had in months, maybe even years if I was being honest with myself. That evening, my friends threw me what they called a freedom party, which was really just a barbecue in my buddy Mike's backyard. But they'd gone all out with decorations that said things like, "Congratulations on your divorce," which was technically inaccurate since I'd never actually gotten married, but the sentiment was appreciated. We played paintball in Mike's neighbor's field, which was probably illegal, but nobody called the cops, so we counted it as a win, and everyone made jokes about how at least I didn't have to learn Logan's middle name for a best man speech, which was honestly one of the better silver linings anyone had pointed out. My friend Sarah, who'd never liked Melissa and had been very vocal about it, gave a toast that was mostly just her listing all the red flags she'd noticed over the years that I'd apparently been too blind to see. And while it was kind of brutal, it was also kind of validating to know that other people had seen the problems I'd been making excuses for. Meanwhile, according to the group chat that I'd been added to by Melissa's former roommate who apparently had switched sides in this breakup, Melissa had spent the day that should have been her wedding crying in her childhood bedroom, while Linda raged on Facebook about men who can't handle strong women. The post had apparently gotten pretty heated, with several of Linda's friends pointing out that maybe Melissa bore some responsibility for the situation, which had caused Linda to double down and start blocking people left and right. Robert, bless his heart, had apparently stayed completely silent through the whole thing, neither defending nor condemning anyone, which I respected immensely. I blocked Linda's profile without reading whatever manifesto she'd posted, because I'd reached my lifetime limit of being called controlling and insecure, and I spent the rest of the evening eating ribs and playing cornhole and feeling genuinely happy for the first time in what felt like forever. Later that night, after I'd gotten home and showered off the paint and barbecue smoke, I did something impulsive. I sold the engagement ring. I'd been holding on to it, not sure what to do with it. But sitting there looking at the Iceland confirmation email, I realized I didn't want that ring in my apartment anymore. Didn't want the reminder of what it represented. Didn't want to look at it and think about Melissa and ultimatums and emotional affairs with ex-boyfriends. So I found a reputable jeweler who bought used engagement rings, made an appointment for Monday, and decided that whatever money I got for it was going straight into my Iceland fund, because if I was going to move forward with my life, I might as well do it in style under the Northern Lights. 2 weeks later, I was standing in Iceland watching the Northern Lights dance across the sky in colors that looked photoshopped but were somehow real, and I felt more at peace than I had in years. The ring had sold for a decent amount, enough to upgrade my hotel and book a glacier tour, and standing there in the freezing cold watching nature put on a light show that made every wedding decoration I'd ever stressed about look pathetic in comparison, I realized I'd made the right choice. I took one photo, just one, and posted it to Instagram with no caption because the image spoke for itself. Within minutes, I saw that Melissa had viewed my story, and I felt absolutely nothing about it, which was probably the best indication that I was actually moving on. People back home kept asking if I regretted canceling the wedding, if I should have just let Logan be in the wedding party, if maybe I'd overreacted. And every time someone asked, I gave them the same answer: absolutely not. If I'd given in to Melissa's ultimatum, Logan would have been at every barbecue, every Christmas, every family gathering for the rest of my life. He probably would have shown up on our honeymoon with sunscreen and emotional support, invited himself to our anniversary dinners, been the first person Melissa called whenever we had an argument. I would have spent my entire marriage competing with a ghost, always wondering if I measured up to whatever idealized version of Logan existed in Melissa's head. I lost $5,500, but I gained something infinitely more valuable: my self-respect, my peace of mind, and the knowledge that I wasn't willing to settle for a relationship where I came in second place to someone's ex-boyfriend. Standing under the Northern Lights, breathing in the cold Icelandic air, I realized that sometimes the best decision you can make is the one that costs you something in the short term, but saves you everything in the long term. When someone gives you an ultimatum, they think you'll fold. They think you'll choose them over your own boundaries because the alternative is too scary or too expensive or too lonely. But sometimes the best move is to call their bluff, walk away, and book a ticket to Iceland instead. Cheap price for dodging a lifetime of Logan cameos. I came home late from work after a brutal day, only to find myself locked out in the dead of night. My wife sends a smug text: "Come home early next time." I thought it was some joke until I started freezing in the cold. I called her 1,000 times, but she didn't answer. So I knocked on our neighbor's door, then she let me in with a condition. She whispered in, "Look, I'm not asking for sympathy here, but let me paint you a picture of what absolute rock bottom looks like in human form. It starts with my boss, Gerald. Yeah, Gerald with the coffee breath and the habit of standing way too close when he talks, spending a solid 45 minutes explaining why my quarterly report was lacking vision. Brother, the only thing lacking vision here is your ability to see that nobody, and I mean nobody, cares about pivot tables at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. But sure, let's workshop my Excel skills while the entire office is mentally already 3 beers deep at O'Malley's down the street. Then comes the printer. You know the one. Every office has that one demonic printer that decides, right when you need it most, that today's the day it identifies as a paperweight. I'm standing there, watching it blink red like it's mocking me, and I swear I heard it whisper, "Paper jam," in the same tone Pennywise says, "We all float down here." 20 minutes of my life, gone, sacrificing virgin toner cartridges to the tech gods just to print out a document I could have emailed. But no, Gerald needs hard copies because apparently, we're cosplaying as a 1987 corporate office. And the vending machine? Oh, that beautiful glass box of lies and broken dreams decided that my last 500 naira. Yeah, I know, we're in the States, but my Nigerian roots run deep and I still think in naira sometimes. Sue me. Anyway, it decided that money was better off disappearing into its mechanical stomach without giving me the Snickers bar I desperately needed. I watched my candy rotate, do a little spin like it was auditioning for Dancing with the Stars, and then just stop. Stuck. Mocking me. At that point, I genuinely considered my life choices. Like, is this what my college degree got me? Standing in front of a vending machine, having a mental breakdown over a candy bar that costs less than a decent coffee? So yeah, that was my day. I left the office around 11:30 p.m. because apparently, just finish up that one thing means sacrifice your entire evening to corporate America, and stepped outside into what I can only describe as nature's personal vendetta against me. The wind wasn't just cold. It was that aggressive kind of cold that finds every gap in your jacket, every moment of exposed skin, and attacks it like a personal insult. My ears went numb within 30 seconds. My nose started running like it was training for a marathon. And my fingers? They gave up on life entirely, turning into these useless frozen sausages attached to my hands. The drive home was miserable. My car's heater, bless its struggling little heart, was putting out air that was technically warmer than the Arctic blast outside, but only technically. Like, if you were choosing between my car heater and a polar bear's breath, you'd have to really think about it. I cranked it up to maximum, and all I got was slightly less cold air and the vague smell of burning plastic. Fantastic. Nothing says successful adult quite like driving home in a vehicle that's one thermostat setting away from catching fire. I pulled into my driveway around midnight, thinking about nothing except getting inside, taking the world's hottest shower, and maybe, just maybe, salvaging what was left of my Friday night with some leftover pizza and whatever garbage reality TV my wife Bianca had recorded. Simple dreams, you know? The dreams of a man who's been beaten down by corporate America and aggressive weather patterns. I walked up to my front door. My front door, to the house I pay rent on, in case that detail becomes important later, which, spoiler alert, it absolutely does, and reached for my keys. Slid the key into the lock, turned it, and nothing. The door didn't budge, not even a little. I stood there for a second, confused, doing that thing where you jiggle the key like maybe you just didn't turn it hard enough the first time. Still nothing. Then I noticed it. The deadbolt was engaged from the inside. From the inside. My first thought was maybe Bianca had locked it by accident. It happens, right? People get distracted, they're watching TV, they absent-mindedly lock the deadbolt. Totally reasonable explanation. Except my phone buzzed right at that moment, and I looked down to see a text from my beloved wife. It said, and I quote, "Come home early next time, winking-faced." I stared at that message for a solid 10 seconds, waiting for the punchline. Because surely, this was a joke. My wife, the woman I married, the woman who promised to love and cherish and not lock me out of my own house during what was basically a weather emergency. She was joking, right? The winky emoji really sold it. Very playful. Very haha. Got you, babe. Now let me in before my extremities start falling off. Except she wasn't joking. I called her. It rang, and went to voicemail. "Hey, this is Bianca. Leave a message." All chipper and cute, like she wasn't currently playing Ice Fortress with her own husband. I hung up, called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. By the fifth call, I started getting creative with my approach, like maybe if I called from a slightly different angle, the universe would take pity on me. It did not. The wind picked up, and I'm not being dramatic here, but I'm pretty sure I felt my soul try to exit my body through my left ear. I was standing on my own porch, looking at my own door, unable to access my own home, while somewhere inside my wife was doing. What exactly? Watching me freeze through the window? Having the time of her life? Auditioning for America's Next Top Sociopath? By call number 27. Yes, I counted, because at that point counting was the only thing keeping me from having a complete mental breakdown. I started naming each voicemail attempt like they name hurricanes. There goes voicemail Beryl. Oh look, voicemail Cindy's making an appearance. Voicemail Derek's really bringing the pain tonight. It was either that or start crying, and I wasn't ready to give the universe that satisfaction. My dignity, whatever was left of it after the day I'd had, packed its bags and left my body somewhere around call number 30. I was fully aware of how pathetic I looked, standing outside in sub-zero temperatures, phone in hand, probably looking like a rejected door-to-door salesman who'd lost his way. My nose was running, my eyes were watering from the cold, and I'm pretty sure I'd started talking to myself, which is never a great sign. The wind howled, and I mean literally howled, like wolves had gotten together and decided to provide the soundtrack to my misery. And I had this moment of perfect clarity where I realized I was standing outside the house I pay rent for, the house with my name on the lease, looking like a very cold, very confused snowman that someone had built and then immediately regretted. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? I could see the warm glow of lights inside. I could practically feel the heat radiating through the walls. Somewhere in there was my couch, my TV, my hot shower, my leftover pizza, and apparently, my wife who decided tonight was the perfect night for a masterclass in psychological warfare. If you'd told me that morning that this was how my day would end, locked out, frozen, dignity destroyed, naming voicemails like natural disasters, I probably would have just stayed in bed. But hindsight's 2020, and frostbite's apparently very real, and I was about to learn that sometimes the coldest night of your life is just the warm-up act for something way, way worse. So there I was, approximately 3 minutes away from becoming a genuine medical emergency, when I saw it, the porch light next door flickering on like a lighthouse in a storm, except instead of guiding ships to safety, it was guiding one very cold, very desperate husband to the promise of central heating and basic human dignity. Mrs. Linda Dawson's house, my neighbor of about 2 years, the woman I'd exchanged maybe 15 sentences with total, mostly consisting of nice weather and your lawn looks great, was suddenly glowing like the promised land. Now, let me tell you about Linda. She's one of those people who's always been there, but never really there. You know what I mean? Like, I'd see her getting her mail, watering her plants, occasionally bringing in groceries, but she had this aura of mystery around her. Not in a creepy way. More like in a this woman definitely has an interesting backstory, but minds her own business kind of way. She's probably mid-40s, always dressed like she's about to attend a business casual meeting even when she's just checking her mailbox, with this perfectly maintained silver-streaked hair that probably costs more to maintain than my car payment. The kind of woman who makes you feel like you should be more organized just by existing near her. I'd always wondered what her deal was. No husband that I'd ever seen, no kids running around, no visitors except for the occasional delivery guy. She'd moved in about 6 months after Bianca and I did, and in all that time, she'd been nothing but polite, quiet, and completely unremarkable in the best possible way. The perfect neighbor, honestly. Doesn't throw loud parties, keeps her property looking like something out of a home improvement magazine, and apparently, doesn't lock people out of their own houses for sport. My pride was somewhere back around call number 15, so I didn't even hesitate. I stumbled across the lawn, because at this point my legs were basically frozen chopsticks trying to remember how walking worked, and made it to her door. Before I could even knock properly, before my knuckles could make contact with the wood, the door swung open like she'd been watching this whole pathetic display from her window. Which, let's be honest, she probably had been. If I'd been watching my neighbor slowly freeze to death on his own porch for the past 40 minutes, I'd probably be entertained too. Linda stood there in this perfect burgundy sweater and black slacks combo that made me feel even more pathetic in my wrinkled work clothes and defeated posture. But her face wasn't judging me. It was something else. Concern mixed with something I couldn't quite place. Determination, maybe? Or that look someone gets when they've been waiting for the right moment to tell you something important, and that moment just arrived gift-wrapped in hypothermia. "Come in," she said, and her voice had this quality to it that made it sound less like an invitation and more like a command from someone who doesn't give commands often but expects them to be followed when she does. Then she added, "But there's a condition." "Ma'am." At that point, I would have signed over my kidney, my car title, and my Netflix password if it came with access to a working thermostat. I would have joined a cult, started a timeshare presentation career, or agreed to listen to her entire collection of Enya albums on repeat. Whatever she wanted, the answer was yes, absolutely. Where do I sign? Please just let me feel my toes again. I nodded so vigorously I'm surprised my head didn't fall off, and she stepped aside. The wave of warm air that hit me when I crossed that threshold was like being hugged by God himself. Her living room was this perfect sanctuary of comfort, warm lighting, plush furniture that looked like it actually supported your back instead of slowly destroying your spine, and this smell. Oh man, this smell. Cinnamon and something else, something that smelled like justice and vindication if those concepts had sense. Maybe it was just air freshener, but in my half-frozen state, it smelled like redemption. She guided me to this massive couch that I immediately sank into like it was made of clouds and forgiveness, and disappeared into her kitchen. I heard the kettle going, cabinets opening and closing, And then she emerged with 2 mugs of tea. Not just tea, good tea. The kind that comes in actual ceramic mugs, not chipped ones with ironic statements about Mondays. She handed me one, and I wrapped both hands around it like it was the Holy Grail, feeling the warmth seep back into my fingers. Linda sat down beside me, not across from me like you'd expect from a near stranger, but right beside me on the couch, close enough that I could see she was wearing this expression that definitely meant we weren't about to discuss the weather. She had this look like a lawyer who's about to present evidence that will blow the entire case wide open. My internal alarm bells started ringing, but honestly, I was too comfortable and too warm to care. She locked you out on purpose, Linda said, her voice quiet but absolutely certain, like she was stating a proven scientific fact rather than making an accusation about my wife. She paused, then added, "And not just to punish you." I blinked at her, my brain still trying to catch up with this sudden shift from nice neighbor offering refuge to nice neighbor dropping psychological bombs. The tea was halfway to my mouth, suspended in midair while I processed what she'd just said. "Excuse me?" I managed to get out, and my voice cracked a little because apparently my vocal cords were also recovering from their near-death experience. Linda didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled out her phone, one of those newer iPhones that costs more than some people's monthly rent, and started scrolling through something. Her face was perfectly neutral, but her jaw was set in this way that told me whatever she was about to show me was going to hurt. And not the ouch I stubbed my toe kind of hurt. More like the ouch my entire worldview just shattered into a million pieces kind of hurt. She turned the screen toward me, and for a second, I couldn't process what I was seeing. It was night vision footage, the kind you see on those home security systems that rich people install and forget about. The quality was crystal clear though, almost too clear. Clear enough that I could see it was my front door, my porch, my house. And there was Bianca, my wife, looking nothing like someone who was about to accidentally fall asleep and lock her husband out. She was giggling, actually giggling, like a teenager sneaking her boyfriend past her parents. The timestamp on the video showed last Tuesday, the night I'd texted her that I was working late on the Henderson account. The night I'd actually been working late, legitimately, sitting in a fluorescent-lit conference room, eating vending machine dinner and hating my life. And there she was, opening our front door, letting someone in. Not just someone. A man. Tall, built like he actually used his gym membership instead of just paying for it, and feeling guilty, wearing one of those fitted shirts that guys wear when they want everyone to know they have muscles. I watched them on that tiny screen, watched her touch his arm, watched her lean in and whisper something that made him laugh. Watched them disappear into my house, my living room, probably onto my couch, and suddenly the cold I'd felt outside seemed like nothing compared to the ice spreading through my chest. That was 3 weeks ago, Linda said softly, and I realized my hands were shaking. Not from the cold anymore. I installed the camera after I noticed patterns. Late-night visits when your car wasn't in the driveway. That wasn't the first time. I couldn't speak. My mouth had forgotten how words worked. I just stared at that screen, at my wife's face frozen in mid-laugh, looking happier than I'd seen her look in months. Looking the way she used to look at me, back when things were good, back before we became 2 people sharing a mortgage and slowly growing to resent each other's existence. "There are more," Linda continued, her voice gentle but unflinching, like a surgeon who knows they're about to cut deep but also knows it's necessary. "Multiple nights. Different occasions. I kept them because..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Because I knew eventually, you'd need to see the truth. And tonight, when she locked you out in this weather, when I saw you standing there calling and calling while she ignored you, I couldn't stay silent anymore. That's not petty. That's not even just cruel. That's calculated." I finally found my voice, though it came out rough and barely recognizable. "Show me everything." Linda hesitated for just a moment, searching my face for something. Maybe to see if I could handle it. Maybe to see if I was going to have a breakdown right there on her expensive couch. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded once and started scrolling again. "I will," she said. "But first, promise me something. When you decide what to do with this information, and you will decide, I can see it in your eyes, don't do it halfway. Don't confront her and let her talk her way out of it. Don't let her make you the villain somehow. People like her? They're experts at flipping the script. So whatever you do, make sure you're ready to see it through to the end." I looked at her, This woman who'd been a virtual stranger an hour ago and was now handing me evidence of my marriage's destruction like it was a life raft. The warm lighting made her eyes look almost golden, and I realized she wasn't just giving me information. She was giving me a choice. A path forward. Or maybe a path out. I smiled for the first time that entire godforsaken night. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just realized the game they'd been losing without even knowing they were playing. Oh, I never do half measures, I told her, and meant every word. You can ask my electric bill. When I commit to something, I commit. Linda smiled back, and it was the smile of someone who recognized a fellow survivor. Good, she said simply. Then let me show you what your wife's really been up to while you've been working late. I sat there on Linda's cloud couch, staring at her phone screen like it was buffering my entire marriage in real time, complete with that annoying little spinning wheel of death that shows up when your internet's about to give up on life. Except this wasn't buffering. This was loading, crystal clear, in high definition, night vision glory, and every frame was another nail in the coffin of my relationship. Linda swiped to the next video. Same angle, different night. There was Bianca again, wearing that red dress I'd complimented her on back in September, the one she'd said she bought for girls' night out. Apparently, girls' night was code for letting random gym bro into our house while my husband thinks I'm drinking mojitos with Karen from book club. The timestamp read 9:47 p.m., September 14th. I remembered that night. I'd been at that mandatory company dinner with Gerald and his endless stories about his timeshare in Orlando. I'd texted Bianca around 10 saying I'd be home by midnight. She'd responded with a heart emoji. A heart emoji. While Mr. Biceps was probably sitting on my couch, drinking my beer, existing in my space. Jesus, I muttered, and Linda just nodded like she'd been waiting for that exact reaction. There's more, she said, and honestly, at this point, I wasn't sure if I wanted there to be more or if I wanted her to tell me this was all some elaborate prank and Ashton Kutcher was about to jump out from behind her curtains. Spoiler alert, Ashton did not appear, and the hits just kept coming. She showed me another clip. October 3rd, Bianca practically skipping to the door. This time the guy was wearing a jacket, looking around like he was checking if anyone was watching. Amateur hour, buddy. Linda's camera had you in 4K, looking guilty as hell. They disappeared inside again, and I watched the timestamp tick forward. He didn't leave until 1:23 a.m. 1:23 in the morning. I'd been in Chicago that night for a conference, sleeping in a hotel room that smelled like corporate sadness and recycled air, completely oblivious to the fact that my wife was hosting what appeared to be an ongoing affair in our shared living space. How long have you known? I asked, and my voice came out flat, emotionless, like my brain had decided feelings were too expensive right now, and we were operating on the basic package. Linda set her phone down on the coffee table, screen side up, so I could still see that frozen frame of Bianca's smiling face. I suspected something was off about 6 weeks ago, she said. I work from home most days, you know. Freelance consulting. Means I'm around more than most neighbors. I started noticing a pattern. This car would show up on nights when you weren't home. Always parked 2 houses down, never in your driveway. At first, I thought maybe it was nothing. Maybe a friend visiting. Maybe I was just being a nosy neighbor with too much time on my hands. She picked up her tea, took a slow sip like she was gathering her thoughts, or maybe just giving me time to process. The mug had some inspirational quote on it about living your best life, which felt wildly inappropriate for the current situation, but whatever. I wasn't going to judge her mug choices when she was literally saving me from being the last person on earth to know about my wife's extracurricular activities. But then, Linda continued, I saw them one night. I was taking out the trash around 11, glamorous life I lead, I know, and I saw her walking him to his car. The way she was looking at him. She trailed off, her expression somewhere between sympathy and disgust. That wasn't the look of someone entertaining a friend. So I installed the security camera. Took me about 20 minutes, cost me $200 on Amazon, and within a week, I had enough footage to prove I wasn't imagining things. I nodded slowly, trying to wrap my head around the fact that my neighbor had been running surveillance on my cheating wife, like she was part of some neighborhood watch program that took their duties way too seriously. Except I wasn't mad about it. I was grateful, and also experiencing what I'm pretty sure was the emotional equivalent of being hit by a bus, backing up, and getting hit again just to make sure the first time did enough damage. Show me the rest, I said, because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment, or maybe because some part of me needed to see exactly how bad this was. Needed to see every piece of evidence so I couldn't later convince myself I'd overreacted or misunderstood or been too hasty in whatever nuclear option I was about to deploy. Linda didn't argue. She picked up her phone and started going through the folder like she was presenting evidence in court, which, honestly, this might end up being exactly that. Video after video, date after date, a greatest hits collection of my wife's betrayal. There was the night of our anniversary, October 21st. When she told me she wasn't feeling well and suggested I go to the dinner reservation alone or cancel it. I'd canceled, brought home soup, and she'd barely touched it, said she just needed rest. The timestamp on Linda's video showed why. Mr. Muscles had shown up an hour after I'd gone to bed, and they'd spent who knows how long in my living room, doing who knows what, while I slept upstairs like an idiot. There was Halloween night, when she'd said she was too tired to hand out candy, and I'd done it solo, dressed in that ridiculous vampire costume she'd picked out, while she apparently entertained her own kind of monster inside. There was last Tuesday, the night that led to tonight, the night I'd worked late and she'd worked late on destroying our marriage. The footage showed them laughing, touching, existing in that comfortable way that people do when they've been doing something for a while, when they're not nervous anymore, when they've settled into their routine. I didn't want to interfere, Linda said quietly, and I could hear genuine conflict in her voice. Part of me thought, who am I to get involved in someone else's marriage? What if I'm wrong? What if there's an explanation? But then tonight happened. When I saw her text you that message, when I saw you standing out there in the cold, calling and calling while she ignored you. She shook her head. That wasn't just infidelity. That was cruelty. That was her enjoying your suffering. And I won't, stand by and watch someone be treated like that. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized this woman barely knew me but had more respect for me than my own wife. This virtual stranger had spent her own money, her own time, collecting evidence to protect someone she'd exchanged maybe 15 conversations with over 2 years. Meanwhile, the woman I'd promised my life to, the woman who promised me hers, was using our home like a cheap motel and our marriage like a joke. Send me everything, I told Linda, and my voice had this new quality to it, something hard and decisive that I didn't quite recognize but also didn't hate. It was the voice of someone who'd just watched their old life burn down and was standing in the ashes trying to decide what to build next. Linda nodded and started airdropping files to my phone. My screen lit up with notification after notification, videos downloading, each one a little time bomb of evidence. I watched the progress bars fill, each one representing another night I'd been played, another evening I'd been the fool, another instance of me being the punchline to a joke I didn't know I was part of. Promise me one thing, Linda said, her eyes intense. When you burn it down, and I know you will, I can see it in your eyes, don't do it halfway. Don't let her cry her way out of this. Don't let her blame you. Don't let her twist this into somehow being your fault because you worked too much or weren't attentive enough or whatever excuse she tries to sell. People like her, they're masters at playing the victim. They'll make you feel guilty for catching them. So whatever you do, whatever your plan is, see it through completely. I smiled, and it felt good, that smile. It felt like the first genuine emotion I'd had in months that wasn't exhaustion or frustration or that low-level resentment that builds up when you're in a dying relationship, but too stubborn or scared to admit it. This smile was different. This was the smile of someone who'd just been handed the keys to their own liberation and was about to take the most satisfying drive of their life. Oh, I never do half measures, I said, and meant it down to my bones. Ask my electric bill. Ask my credit card statement. Ask anyone who knows me. When I commit to something, I commit completely. And right now, I looked down at my phone, at the little folder icon labeled Evidence that Linda had created, containing what had to be dozens of videos. Right now, I'm committing to making sure Bianca understands exactly what happens when you mistake someone's patience for stupidity. Linda smiled back, and it was the smile of someone who recognized a kindred spirit, someone who understood that sometimes the best response to cruelty isn't more cruelty, it's precision. It's patience. It's planning. It's making sure that when the hammer finally drops, it drops exactly where you want it to, with maximum impact and zero collateral damage to yourself. Good, she said simply. Then let me tell you what else I know. Because the videos are just the beginning. I've been paying attention for weeks now. I know his schedule, his car, his patterns. I even know his name. She paused, letting that sink in. It's Marcus. He works at that gym on Henderson Street. You know the one, with the obnoxious neon sign that looks like it's trying to give everyone seizures? He's one of the trainers there. And based on what I've observed, your wife isn't his only client getting special attention after hours. I laughed, and it came out bitter and sharp. So she's not even original. She's part of this guy's rotation. That's almost worse somehow. It is worse, Linda agreed. Because it means she threw away your marriage for someone who probably can't even spell commitment, let alone understand it. But hey, she raised her mug in a mock toast. That's information you can use. Knowledge is power and all that. We sat there for a moment in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been strangers an hour ago now bonded by infidelity footage and the mutual understanding that sometimes your neighbors know your life better than you do. My phone buzzed. All the files had finished downloading. I had everything I needed. Evidence, timeline, patterns, even the guy's name and workplace. Bianca had been playing chess while I thought we were playing checkers. But now I knew the whole board. And I was about to show her what happens when the pawn finally realizes he's been a king all along. Dawn broke over my neighborhood like it had no idea it was rising on the first day of my wife's carefully constructed world starting to crumble, which, fair enough, the sun's got its own problems to deal with. I'd spent the rest of the night at Linda's place, on her couch, fully clothed, because despite what my wife might think about appropriate overnight guest behavior, some of us have boundaries. Linda had given me a blanket that smelled like lavender and something expensive, probably fabric softener that costs more per ounce than premium gasoline. And I dozed off around 3 a.m. after watching that video folder so many times I could probably recreate each scene from memory. I woke up around 6:30 to the smell of coffee that definitely wasn't Folgers, and Linda was already up, dressed like she had a board meeting at 7. Even though it was Saturday, and normal people were still in their pajamas contemplating whether Lucky Charms counted as a balanced breakfast. She handed me a mug without saying anything, just gave me this look that said, "You ready for this?" And honestly, I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I was definitely committed, which is basically the same thing when you're running on 3 hours of sleep and pure spite. Thank you, I told her, meaning it for way more than just the coffee. For everything. For the evidence, for the couch, for not thinking I'm crazy when I inevitably burn my entire life down today. She smiled, and it was one of those knowing smiles that made me think she'd probably been through something similar in her mysterious past. Just remember what I said. All the way through, no half measures. And if you need anything, an alibi, a witness, someone to help you change the locks, you know where I live. I nodded, drank that heavenly coffee that probably cost more than my car payment, and headed home. The walk across the lawn felt different than it had 12 hours ago. Last night, I'd been a desperate, frozen husband begging to be let into his own house. This morning I was a man with a plan, a folder full of evidence, and absolutely nothing left to lose except a wife I was rapidly realizing I didn't actually want to keep. I used my key, because apparently, the deadbolt was no longer engaged. How convenient, and walked in like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't spent half the night outside turning into a human popsicle. Like I hadn't spent the other half watching my marriage dissolve in night vision footage. The house was quiet. That early morning quiet where everything feels suspended and peaceful, completely unaware that a Category 5 hurricane named Consequences was about to make landfall. I heard movement upstairs around 7:15, the familiar sounds of Bianca's morning routine. Shower running, hairdryer humming, closet doors opening and closing as she no doubt selected the perfect, I definitely didn't lock my husband out in freezing temperatures last night outfit. I busied myself in the kitchen, because nothing says, "I'm not plotting your downfall," quite like making breakfast for someone you're about to systematically destroy. I made eggs, scrambled, the way she likes them, with that fancy cheese she insists on buying from Whole Foods that costs approximately $1 million per ounce. I made toast, perfectly golden, not too dark. I even brewed her favorite tea, that overpriced hibiscus situation that tastes like flowers dyed in hot water, but she swears is cleansing. I set the table like we were in some kind of domestic sitcom. like I was the loving husband preparing a surprise breakfast for his beloved wife, not a man who'd spent the night documenting every instance of her betrayal. She floated down the stairs around 7:45, and I use the word floated because that's exactly what she did. She was wearing this casual but cute outfit that probably took her 30 minutes to make look effortless. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was subtle but present, and she had this expression on her face like she'd slept great and life was wonderful, and she definitely wasn't a terrible person. She looked happy, relaxed, like someone without a care in the world or a guilty conscience in her body. "Morning," she said, and her voice had that sing-song quality that people use when they're in a good mood, probably because they successfully psychologically tortured their spouse the night before and got away with it. "Morning," I replied, matching her tone exactly, like we were in a play and both reading from the same script titled Everything is Fine, a comedy in one act. She sat down at the table, looked at the spread I'd prepared, and her eyes widened slightly. "Wow, what's all this? Did you get a promotion or something?" "Nope," I said cheerfully, setting a plate in front of her with a smile that I'm pretty sure looked genuine because I've been practicing my not plotting revenge face in the mirror for the past hour. "Just thought I'd make breakfast. You know, be spontaneous. Romantic. All those things married people are supposed to do." She laughed, actually laughed, like I'd told a joke instead of making a thinly veiled reference to the fact that our marriage was about as romantic as a dental procedure at this point. "Well, it's sweet. Thank you, honey." "Honey." She called me honey. The audacity was actually impressive. "So," she said, taking a bite of eggs and making an appreciative sound that made me want to tell her those eggs were seasoned with deception and garnished with irony. "Rough night last night? You look tired." "Oh, we're doing this. We're really doing this." I took a sip of my coffee, nowhere near as good as Linda's, but it would do, and nodded. "Yeah, you could say that. Traffic was insane coming home. And then it was so cold, felt like I was standing outside forever." I watched her face carefully. She didn't even flinch. Just kept eating her eggs like I hadn't just given her the perfect opening to apologize, explain, or show even the tiniest shred of remorse. "Oh, that's rough," she said, with all the sympathy of someone commenting on someone else's mildly inconvenient day, not the sympathy of someone who deliberately locked their husband out during what was basically Arctic conditions. "Yeah, it was freezing last night. I'm glad I was inside where it was warm." The emphasis on inside and warm felt deliberate, like she was twisting the knife just to see if I'd react. I didn't give her the satisfaction. "Must have been nice," I said, and I kept my voice level, pleasant, completely neutral. "Being all cozy while I was out there dealing with the elements. Global betrayal levels of cold, you know?" She paused, fork halfway to her mouth, and I saw something flicker across her face. Confusion? Suspicion? The faint recognition that maybe I'd just said something with multiple meanings? But it passed quickly, replaced by that same casual smile. "Global betrayal?" she repeated, laughing. "That's dramatic. It's just winter." "You're right," I agreed easily. "I'm being dramatic. Must be the lack of sleep. Being locked out really takes it out of you." "Locked out?" She had the nerve to look confused, like she was an Oscar-nominated actress auditioning for the role of innocent wife who would never. "Oh my God, was the door locked? I must have fallen asleep. I'm so sorry, baby. Why didn't you call me?" "Baby." She called me baby. I wanted to pull out my phone and show her my call log. All 27 attempts, all 27 times she'd let it ring through to voicemail, while she was presumably doing whatever one does when they lock their husband out on purpose. "I tried," I said, and I let just enough edge into my voice to make it interesting without being accusatory. "Multiple times, actually. But you must have really been out cold. Deep sleeper, my wife." She had the decency to look mildly apologetic, though it was about as genuine as a $3 bill. "I'm sorry, I must have had my phone on silent." "That's awful. You should have knocked louder or something." "Oh, I knocked," I assured her. The door was too busy being a fortress to notice. Deadbolt and everything. Very secure. Almost like someone locked it deliberately. There it was again, that flicker of something in her eyes. But she recovered quickly, took another bite of toast, and shrugged. "Well, you know I always lock up before bed. Safety first and all that. I probably just forgot you weren't home yet. Forgot I wasn't home. At midnight. When I texted her at 11 saying I was on my way. When she'd responded with that smug little winky face emoji that now felt like it should be used as evidence in court under the category of premeditated spousal cruelty. Right? I said, nodding like this made perfect sense, like I wasn't currently sitting across from someone who'd elevated lying to an art form. Safety first. Can't be too careful these days. Never know who might try to get into your house uninvited. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife, but she either didn't catch it or pretended not to. She just smiled, finished her eggs, and complimented my cooking like we were a normal couple having a normal breakfast instead of a man and a woman engaged in the world's most passive-aggressive conversation. "These eggs are really good," she said. "You should cook more often." "Maybe I will," I replied. "I've got all this free time now. Might take up some new hobbies. Photography, maybe. Or video editing. I hear surveillance footage is really popular these days." She blinked at me, and for just a second, just one beautiful second, I saw uncertainty cross her face. But then it was gone, replaced by that same casual demeanor that said she was either completely oblivious or playing her own game. "Surveillance footage?" She laughed. "What? Are you going to become a security guard now?" No, I said, finishing my coffee and standing up to clear the plates. "Just thinking about how interesting it is, how cameras can capture things you never even knew were happening. All those moments you think are private, but someone's watching, recording, collecting evidence." I took her plate, our hands brushed, and she looked up at me with what might have been affection or might have been calculation. I honestly couldn't tell anymore and wasn't sure I cared. "You're being weird this morning," she said, and it sounded like an accusation wrapped in a joke. "Am I?" I loaded the dishwasher, taking my time, making sure every dish was perfectly placed because I had nothing but time now. Time and evidence, and a growing sense of satisfaction that came from knowing something she didn't know I knew. I think I'm being perfectly normal. Just a husband making breakfast for his wife, having a totally ordinary conversation about totally ordinary things like deadbolts and surveillance, and the weather. She stood up, grabbed her purse, checked her phone, probably looking for messages from Marcus, though she'd never know I knew his name now, knew where he worked, knew everything. "Well, I've got errands to run. Hair appointment, then meeting Sarah for lunch." Sarah. Right. Sarah, who definitely existed and definitely wasn't code for meeting my gym trainer boyfriend for an afternoon of activities that would make the footage Linda showed me look tame. "Have fun," I told her, and I smiled. Genuinely smiled, because every minute she was gone was another minute I had to plan, prepare, and set the stage for the greatest told-you-so moment of my entire life. She kissed my cheek. Actually kissed my cheek, like we were some happily married couple from a commercial for life insurance or cottage cheese, and headed for the door. "Oh, and honey," I called after her, and she turned, hand on the doorknob. "Next time you want to lock me out, maybe check the weather forecast first. Hypothermia is a bad look on me." She laughed like I'd made another joke, blew me a kiss, and left. I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of breakfast with a liar, and pulled out my phone. Linda had texted me. "How'd it go?" I typed back. "She has no idea. Operation Oscar-worthy performance is officially underway." 3 dots appeared, then, "Attaboy. Keep me posted." I looked around my house, my fortress that had become a prison, my home that had become a stage for someone else's betrayal, and I smiled. Because Bianca thought she was winning. She thought she'd gotten away with it. Thought I was just the oblivious husband who'd accept any excuse, believe any lie, swallow any story she fed me. But the thing about underestimating people? Eventually, they surprise you. And I was about to become the most surprising thing that ever happened to Bianca's carefully constructed world of lies. So here's the thing about deciding to systematically dismantle someone's life. It requires patience, planning, and a level of calculated coolness that I honestly didn't know I possessed until approximately 72 hours ago. Turns out, being betrayed unlocks character traits you never knew existed, like suddenly becoming a strategic mastermind who operates with the precision of a Swiss watch and the emotional detachment of a particularly ambitious chess player. I spent the weekend playing the role of world's most attentive husband, and let me tell you, I deserved every award that doesn't exist for this performance. I made Bianca coffee in the morning, asked about her day with genuine-sounding interest, laughed at her stories that were probably 50% fabricated, and even suggested we watch one of those reality shows she loves, where people argue about who said what at whose birthday party. I was so convincing that I almost convinced myself I wasn't currently running the most elaborate counter-operation since the Trojan horse, except instead of a horse, I was using kindness as my weapon, and instead of soldiers, I was armed with surveillance footage and pure spite. Monday morning, I transformed into James Bond, except instead of fancy gadgets and a license to kill, I had Amazon Prime and a license to document. I'd spent Sunday night researching the best discrete recording devices, reading reviews like I was preparing for a doctoral thesis on how to catch your cheating wife without her noticing, a comprehensive study. By noon on Monday, I had ordered 2 voice-activated recorders, small enough to hide under furniture, battery life of 24 hours, 5-star reviews from people who were clearly also living in soap operas, 1 motion sensor camera disguised as a phone charger, because apparently that's a thing that exists and I love technology, and a GPS tracker that I wasn't sure I'd use, but ordered anyway because when you're going full surveillance mode, you might as well commit to the aesthetic. The packages arrived Tuesday with that beautiful Amazon efficiency that makes you wonder why they can deliver spy equipment in 24 hours, but your regular orders take a week. I spent Tuesday afternoon setting up my new operation while Bianca was at yoga class, which, based on the pattern Linda had established, probably meant she was at the gym with Marcus doing exercises that definitely weren't yoga, unless yoga had suddenly become a lot more horizontal and significantly less spiritual. I planted the first recorder under our living room couch, right in that little space where the fabric meets the frame, where nobody ever looks unless they're searching for lost remote controls or their dignity. The second one went under our bedroom nightstand, tucked behind the leg where it was invisible unless you got on your hands and knees. And let's be honest, the only person getting on their hands and knees in this house lately was probably me looking for my self-respect. The camera/phone charger went right on the kitchen counter, plugged in and functioning, looking exactly like a normal phone charger except it was recording everything in glorious 1080p. I even plugged my actual phone into it to test it, and it worked perfectly. Charged my phone while simultaneously charging my revenge plan. Beautiful synergy. I set up the app on my phone that connected to all these devices, and suddenly I had access to real-time audio and video of my own house. It felt weird, honestly, like I was spying on my own life, which I guess technically I was, except I was really spying on my wife's secret life that she was conducting in my space, with my furniture, probably using my Wi-Fi. The disrespect was almost impressive. Wednesday morning, I kissed Bianca goodbye and told her I loved her, and I watched her face as she said it back, trying to detect any guilt, any hesitation, any sign that she felt even remotely bad about what she was doing. Nothing. Just that same smile, that same casual affection that you'd give to a roommate you mildly tolerate. I was basically furniture to her at this point, functional, present, but ultimately ignorable. I got to work and spent the first hour pretending to care about the quarterly projections Gerald was rambling about while secretly checking my phone under my desk like a teenager in class. The app was working perfectly. I could see my empty living room, hear the hum of our refrigerator, watch our cat Mr. Whiskers, who, by the way, was the only loyal creature in that house, walk across the kitchen counter like he owned the place. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app, and there she was. Bianca, home in the middle of the day when she'd told me she had back-to-back meetings until 5. She was on her phone, smiling at the screen with that expression that I used to think she reserved for me, but now realized she probably gave to anyone who wasn't actively annoying her. She was typing something, laughing to herself, completely oblivious to the fact that I was watching her from 12 miles away while eating a sad desk sandwich that tasted like betrayal and mustard. Then I switched to the audio feed from the living room, and I heard her voice, crystal clear, talking on the phone. No, he's at work. Yeah, he left early. I know, right? Tonight works perfect. 7:30. Can't wait. I sat there in my cubicle, watching the fluorescent lights flicker overhead, listening to my wife arrange what was clearly another rendezvous, and I felt this strange calm wash over me. Not anger. I'd moved past anger somewhere around Sunday. This was something else. This was clarity. This was the feeling you get when you realize you're not crazy, you're not paranoid, you're not overreacting. You're just finally seeing the truth in high definition with surround sound. I saved the audio file, labeled it Wednesday lunch, phone call, and added it to my growing folder of evidence that was starting to look like I was preparing for actual court proceedings, which, let's be honest, I probably was. That evening, I came home at 6, giving myself plenty of time before her 7:30 appointment with disappointment. I found Bianca in the bedroom, getting ready, wearing this outfit that was definitely not what you wear to meet your cousin for dinner, which is what she told me her plans were. "You look nice," I said, because I'm apparently a masochist who enjoys complimenting people who are actively betraying me. "Thanks," she said, checking herself in the mirror, adjusting her hair for the 47th time. "Just want to look decent, you know." "For your cousin," I added, just to see if she'd crack. "Right, for Michelle. She's so judgmental about appearances." Michelle. Her cousin Michelle, who lived in Oregon and definitely wasn't in town, because I'd checked her Instagram that morning like the thorough investigator I'd become, and she'd posted a story from Portland approximately 3 hours ago. "But sure, Bianca, tell me more about this dinner you're having with your geographically impossible cousin." She left at 7:15, kissed me goodbye, told me not to wait up. I watched her pull out of the driveway, waited exactly 3 minutes, then checked the GPS tracker I'd, okay, fine, I admit it, attached to her car on Tuesday night while she was sleeping. The little blue dot on my phone screen moved through our neighborhood, turned onto Henderson Street, and stopped right in front of that obnoxious gym with the neon sign that looked like it was designed by someone who'd never experienced a migraine but wanted everyone else to. Bingo. I screenshotted the location, added it to my folder, and then did something I hadn't done in months. I ordered myself a really good dinner. Not sad takeout. Not whatever leftovers were in the fridge. I went on that fancy restaurant's website, the one Bianca always said was too expensive for a random weeknight, and I ordered their filet mignon with truffle butter, the loaded mashed potatoes, and a slice of that chocolate cake that probably cost more than my car insurance deductible. I ate that meal in my living room, on my couch, under which was hidden a recorder that would probably never be used now because Bianca clearly preferred to conduct her extracurricular activities elsewhere, and I savored every bite. The steak was perfect, medium rare, seasoned beautifully, melting in my mouth like butter. The potatoes were creamy and rich, and everything mashed potatoes should be. The cake was divine, probably illegal in some states because nothing that good should be allowed to exist without a prescription. I ate slowly, deliberately, checking my phone occasionally to watch that little blue dot stay parked at the gym, occasionally moving. Probably from the parking lot to inside, or maybe around back, where the private training rooms were, which I'd learned about from a helpful Google review that mentioned how discreet and private they were. Perfect for people who wanted to work on their core strength and their moral flexibility simultaneously. Around 10 p.m., the blue dot started moving again, heading back toward our house. I finished my cake, cleared my dishes like the responsible adult I was, and got into bed with a book. Not because I was going to read it. I couldn't focus on words right now even if they were written in neon lights, but because it made me look casual, unbothered, like a husband who definitely wasn't tracking his wife's every movement with GPS and surveillance equipment. She came home at 10:23, and I heard her come upstairs, heard her in the bathroom, heard her get into bed beside me. "How was your dinner?" I asked, not looking up from my book. "Good," she said. "Michelle says hi. She asked about you." "That's nice of geographically impossible Michelle," I muttered. "What? Nothing." Said that's nice of her. Tell her I said hi back. Next time she's definitely not in town. We should all grab dinner. She looked at me weird, probably trying to figure out if I was being sarcastic or if I'd finally just lost my mind entirely from being married to her. To be fair, both options were valid at this point. "You okay?" she asked, and it might have been my imagination, but she sounded almost nervous. "Never better," I said, smiling at her in the darkness. "Just thinking about how interesting life is. How you never really know what's going on around you until you start paying attention. It's fascinating, really. The things people do when they think nobody's watching." "You're being weird again," she said, rolling over to face away from me. "Am I? Huh. Must be all that paying attention I've been doing. Tends to make a person weird when they suddenly notice things they missed before." She didn't respond, just pulled the covers up higher, and within minutes, she was asleep. Or pretending to be asleep. I couldn't tell anymore, and honestly didn't care. I lay there in the dark, my phone on the nightstand with its folder full of evidence, my house wired with devices that would make the NSA jealous, and my marriage circling the drain like water after you pull the plug. But here's the thing, I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just ready. Ready for whatever came next. Ready to stop being the fool in this story and start being the plot twist nobody saw coming. I fell asleep that night with a smile on my face, because tomorrow was Thursday, and Thursday was when everything would start accelerating toward the inevitable conclusion that Bianca had been writing with her own choices but hadn't realized she was about to get the ending she deserved instead of the one she expected. Thursday afternoon, my phone lit up with a text from Linda that made me smile in the middle of Gerald's presentation about synergizing our core competencies, which, for the record, is corporate speak for, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm going to use big words and hope nobody notices. The text read, "Made too much lasagna. Need help finishing it. 7 p.m. Translation, War Room Meeting. Bring your evidence and your appetite." I texted back a thumbs up emoji, because apparently, my life had become a spy thriller directed by someone with a really good sense of humor and an unlimited budget for pasta-based plot devices. I spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to work while actually organizing my evidence folder into categories. Video evidence, audio files, GPS tracking data, and my personal favorite, screenshots of lies. I was basically building a presentation that would make Gerald's quarterly reports look like amateur hour, which, to be fair, they already were. I left work at 5:30, early for me, but I'd earned it after the week I'd had. And also Gerald was starting another monologue about leveraging our bandwidth, and I was about to leverage my foot into his bandwidth if I didn't get out of there. I went home, changed out of my work clothes into something casual, and told Bianca I was heading to Tyler's place to watch the game. "Which game?" she asked, barely looking up from her phone, probably texting Marcus about their next workout session that had nothing to do with actual exercise. "The important one," I said vaguely, because honestly, I had no idea what sport was even in season right now, and apparently, neither did Bianca because she just nodded and went back to her phone. "Have fun," she said, and I thought about how she'd been saying that a lot lately. Have fun, enjoy yourself, don't rush back. Basically code for please leave so I can do whatever I want without your inconvenient presence. Well, joke's on you, sweetheart, because I was about to have the time of my life plotting your social demise over homemade Italian food. I walked across the lawn to Linda's house at exactly 7 p.m. because punctuality is important when you're attending a strategic planning session disguised as a dinner party. Linda opened the door before I could knock. She had this sixth sense about timing that made me think she'd probably been a spy in a past life, or maybe a really efficient executive assistant. "Come in," she said, and I followed her into her kitchen, which smelled absolutely incredible. Like, the kind of smell that makes you reconsider every life choice that led you to eating microwave leftovers and gas station sandwiches. Her kitchen was immaculate. Everything had its place. The counters were clear except for the necessities. And there was this gorgeous lasagna sitting on the stove that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread about meals that make your problems disappear. "That smells amazing," I said, and I meant it. "You really made too much? Or was that just code for come over so we can plot revenge?" Linda laughed, and it was this genuine, warm laugh that made me realize I'd been missing that sound. The sound of someone actually enjoying my company instead of tolerating it. "Little bit of both," she admitted. "I did make too much. Cooking for one means I always overshoot. But also, yes, I thought we should discuss your next steps." "Why? Is that even a question at this point?" I replied, and she poured me a glass of red that probably cost more than my monthly utility bill. It tasted like sophistication and good life choices, two things that had been seriously lacking in my recent existence. We sat down at her dining table. Actual dining table, not eating on the couch situation like I'd been doing. And she served up portions of lasagna that were generous without being overwhelming. The first bite was life-changing. I'm talking layers of perfectly cooked pasta, rich meat sauce, creamy cheese that had been blended by actual angels, and this balance of flavors that made me want to cry a little bit, though that might have also been the emotional week I'd been having. "This is incredible," I said, probably with my mouth half full, because manners had taken a back seat to experiencing the best lasagna of my entire life. Like, genuinely incredible. "You could charge money for this." "I did, actually," Linda said, taking a sip of her wine. "Used to run a catering business before I switched to consulting." Turns out people will pay obscene amounts of money for good food and the illusion of sophistication. Well, they were right too, I said, taking another bite and trying to figure out what the secret ingredient was. Seriously, this is better than anything I've had at a restaurant. The secret is fresh herbs and not skimping on the good cheese, she said. Also, making it with love instead of resentment helps. I imagine that's hard to do when you're cooking for someone who's actively betraying you. And just like that, we went from food appreciation to the real reason I was there. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. Between us. So, I've been busy, I said. Very busy, actually. Turns out heartbreak and spite are excellent motivators for becoming tech-savvy. Linda leaned forward, interested, and I walked her through everything. The recorders, the camera, the GPS tracker, the audio I'd captured, the locations I'd documented. I showed her the screenshot from Wednesday night, the blue dot parked at the gym for 3 hours. I played her some of the audio of Bianca on the phone, making plans, laughing, being the version of herself that she apparently reserved for people who weren't me. Wow, Linda said when I finished, and she looked genuinely impressed. You went full covert ops. I'm proud of you. Most people would have just confronted her by now, gotten into a screaming match, and ended up being the bad guy somehow. That's what she wants, I said, surprising myself with how clearly I'd thought this through. She wants me to be the angry, jealous husband who overreacted. She wants to be able to tell people I was controlling, suspicious, unreasonable. But if I come at her with evidence, with documentation, with a timeline and proof and GPS coordinates, she can't spin that. She can't make herself the victim when I've got receipts. Exactly, Linda said, nodding approvingly. You're learning. So what's your next move? You've got the evidence. You've got the paper trail. Are you ready to make a move? Or are you waiting for something specific? I took a long sip of wine, considering. The truth was, I had been waiting for something, though I hadn't quite articulated what it was until that moment. I want it public, I said finally. I don't want this to be some private drama where we quietly separate and she gets to control the narrative. I want people to know. I want everyone who's been looking at me like I'm the oblivious idiot husband to understand that I wasn't oblivious. I was strategic. Linda's eyes lit up like I'd just said exactly what she was hoping to hear. Public scandal, she said. I like it. But you have to be careful. Go too big, and you look vindictive. Go too small, and nobody notices. You need something that feels organic, like the information just happened to get out there. The neighborhood block party, I said suddenly, remembering the invitation that had been sitting on our counter for 2 weeks. It's next Saturday. Everyone will be there. All the neighbors, local people, community folks. Very public, very social, very perfect for information to spread organically. Linda grinned, and it was the grin of someone who appreciated a well-executed plan. The block party, she repeated. That's actually genius. Very community-focused. Very, I'm just being social and definitely not orchestrating someone's public downfall. Right. I was getting excited now, the wine and the lasagna and the validation making me feel more alive than I had in months. And the best part is, people already suspect something. You said so yourself. You've seen them looking cozy in public. So I'm not creating a scandal out of nothing. I'm just confirming what people already think they know. And giving them proof, Linda added. Because suspicion is one thing, but proof? Proof is what makes gossip turn into fact. Proof is what makes people take sides. And trust me, with what you've got, they're going to take your side. We spent the next hour planning like we were Ocean's 11. Except instead of robbing a casino, we were orchestrating the controlled demolition of my wife's reputation. Linda suggested creating an anonymous email, untraceable, professional, just screenshots and timestamps with minimal commentary. Let the evidence speak for itself, she said. Don't editorialize. Don't be emotional. Just facts, dates, locations. People will fill in the blanks themselves. And timing? I asked, pouring us both more wine because this lasagna summit was turning into the most productive meeting I'd had all year. Day of the block party, Linda said without hesitation. Morning of, actually. Give people time to see it, process it, start talking about it. By the time the party starts, everyone will know, but they'll all be pretending they don't. The tension will be delicious. I laughed, actually laughed, and it felt good. You're kind of devious, you know that? I prefer strategically minded, she replied, raising her glass. But yes, I've been told I have a talent for understanding how information spreads. Comes from years of watching people, I guess. You learn patterns. You learn how to use those patterns. Well, I'm glad you're using your powers for good, I said, clinking my glass against hers. Or at least, for my version of good, which involves publicly exposing infidelity at a neighborhood social event. To be fair, Linda said, she exposed herself. We're just making sure everyone sees what was already happening. That's not revenge, that's transparency. Transparency. I repeated, liking the sound of that. That's what I'll tell my therapist when this is all over and I'm unpacking the emotional aftermath. We finished the lasagna, every last bite, because it was too good to waste, and moved to her living room with our wine. Linda pulled up something on her laptop, and I saw it was more footage, newer stuff I hadn't seen yet. I kept recording, she explained. Figured you'd want everything. This is from last night. She hit play, and there they were again, Bianca and Marcus, in the parking lot of that gym, visible under the streetlight. They were talking, standing close, and then he leaned in and kissed her. Not a friendly kiss. Not a see-you-later kiss. A full-on, hand in her hair, pressed against his car kind of kiss that made it very clear this wasn't just an emotional affair or a one-time mistake. This was a whole relationship, complete with parking lot makeout sessions, and probably pet names and inside jokes, and all the things that were supposed to be reserved for the person you actually married. I watched it without flinching, without feeling that gut punch I would have felt a week ago. Now it just felt like more evidence, more ammunition, more proof that I wasn't crazy or paranoid or overreacting. Send that to me too, I said calmly. That's going in the file. Linda nodded and airdropped it over. You're handling this really well, she observed. Most people would be falling apart by now. I fell apart already, I told her honestly. That first night, standing outside in the cold, realizing what was happening, I fell apart then. But you can't stay falling apart forever. Eventually, you have to get up, dust yourself off, and decide what you're going to do with the pieces. And I decided I'm going to use them to build something better, even if that means burning down what was there first. Linda smiled, and there was something in her expression that made me think she understood exactly what I meant, like she'd been through her own version of this and come out the other side. To new beginnings, she said, raising what was left of her wine. To warm nights and locked doors, I replied, remembering that first terrible night that had somehow led to this moment, sitting in a comfortable house, eating incredible food, planning the most satisfying conclusion to the worst chapter of my life. We clinked glasses, and somewhere across the lawn, in my house, my wife was probably on her phone, texting Marcus, making more plans, completely oblivious to the fact that her whole world was about to change. And honestly, I couldn't wait to watch it happen. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of perfect weather that makes you think the universe has a sense of dramatic timing. Clear skies, gentle breeze, temperature in the low 70s. Basically the kind of day that's ideal for neighborhood block parties and, apparently, for watching your carefully constructed lies collapse in real time. I woke up at 6 a.m., not because I'd set an alarm, but because my body had apparently decided that today was too important to waste on sleep. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug, and I was mainlining it. Bianca was still asleep, sprawled across her side of the bed like she didn't have a care in the world, which, to be fair, she didn't yet. I slipped out quietly, grabbed my phone, and headed downstairs to make coffee. The good stuff, not the grocery store brand we usually drank. Today felt like a special occasion, the kind that deserved premium beans and the satisfaction of knowing you're about to become the most interesting person at a community gathering. At 7 a.m. exactly, I opened my laptop and pulled up the anonymous email account Linda and I had created 3 days ago. Username, Concerned Neighbor 2024. Email provider, one of those encrypted services that people use when they're either running a revolutionary movement or exposing their cheating spouse. In our case, same energy, different context. I'd spent the past 2 nights crafting the perfect email. Not too wordy, people don't read essays. Not too emotional, nobody trusts hysteria. Just facts, timestamps, and attachments. The subject line read, information regarding recent neighborhood activity. Professional. Vague. Intriguing. The kind of subject line that makes people open emails even when they probably shouldn't. The body was simple. Attached are documented instances of inappropriate conduct occurring within our community. Dates, times, and locations are provided. No further commentary is necessary. The evidence speaks for itself. Then came the attachments. Oh, the beautiful, glorious attachments. 12 screenshots from Linda's security footage, each one time-stamped and date-stamped, showing Bianca and Marcus entering my house on various occasions. 3 audio files of phone conversations where she was clearly making plans. 5 GPS tracking maps showing her car parked at the gym during times she'd told me she was elsewhere. And the grand finale, that parking lot kiss from Thursday night, captured in perfect clarity, looking like a promotional still from a movie about terrible people making terrible choices. The recipient list was a masterpiece of strategic selection. Our neighborhood has this community email group. One of those things that started for important updates about HOA meetings and lost pets, but devolved into people complaining about garbage pickup schedules and bragging about their kids' soccer achievements. Everyone in a 3-block radius was on it. Approximately 47 households. 47 chances for this information to spread like wildfire through dry grass. My finger hovered over the send button for approximately 10 seconds. This was it. The point of no return. Once I hit send, there was no taking it back, no claiming it was a misunderstanding, no pretending everything was fine. This was the nuclear option, and I was about to press the big red button. I pressed send. The email whooshed off into the digital universe at 7:02 a.m., and I sat there for a moment, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise through my kitchen window like I hadn't just lit a match and tossed it into my wife's carefully maintained social life. It felt weirdly peaceful, actually, like the calm before a storm, except I was the one who'd ordered the storm and paid for express delivery. I spent the next hour doing completely normal Saturday morning things, reading the news, making breakfast, pretending my heart wasn't racing every time I thought about those 47 households opening their emails. By 8:30, my phone buzzed. Text from Tyler, my coworker and actual friend who lived 2 streets over. Bro, just saw something in the neighborhood email. That can't be. I texted back. What did you see? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Screenshots of someone's wife with another dude. Multiple dates. GPS data. Audio files. This is insane. Do you know about this? Just saw it myself. I lied smoothly, because the key to any good strategic operation is plausible deniability. Crazy, right? Crazy doesn't even cover it. People are going wild in the group chat. Mrs. Henderson from number 47 is demanding to know who sent it. Someone else is saying we should respect people's privacy. But bro, if that's who I think it is. My heart rate kicked up a notch. Who do you think it is? I don't want to say, but, I've seen that house before in the background. And that car looks familiar. This is going to be so awkward at the block party today. I smiled into my coffee. Awkward? Yes, that's exactly what it was going to be. By 9 a.m., my phone was buzzing constantly. Not with direct messages. People weren't quite ready to approach me yet, but with notifications from the neighborhood group chat that had apparently exploded into chaos. I opened it and scrolled through, watching in real time as my plan unfolded exactly as Linda had predicted. Mrs. Henderson, this is inappropriate for a community email list. Dave from number 33, but is nobody going to talk about what's actually in those screenshots? Jennifer, the yoga mom who always bragged about her organic kale. I think I know whose house that is grimacing face. Random dad whose name I never learned. This is better than Netflix. Sarah K. Guys, maybe we should delete this? It feels invasive. Mike, owner of 3 loud dogs. Invasive is cheating on your spouse. This is just documentation. And on it went. A beautiful cascade of reactions ranging from pearl clutching to popcorn emoji posting. The best part? Nobody had directly named Bianca yet, but everyone was dancing around it, making vague references, posting thinking face emojis. It was like watching people solve a puzzle in real time. Except the puzzle was my marriage, and the solution was extremely obvious to anyone with functioning eyesight. Around 10 a.m., I heard Bianca stirring upstairs. I quickly closed the group chat and went back to looking like someone who was casually reading about local sports and definitely not monitoring the viral spread of his wife's affair through their community. She came downstairs in her pajamas, yawning, looking adorable and completely unaware that her world had already shifted on its axis. Morning, she said, heading straight for the coffee pot. What time's the block party? Starts at noon, I said, keeping my voice neutral. We should probably head over around 12:30, fashionably late, and all that. She agreed, pouring herself coffee. I'm not really in the mood for small talk with neighbors today, honestly. Might just make a quick appearance and bail. I bit back a laugh. Oh, I don't think small talk is going to be the problem, I muttered. What? Nothing. Just said I think the Johnsons are bringing their famous potato salad. Should be good. She nodded, scrolling through her phone, probably checking messages from Marcus about when they could meet next, completely oblivious to the digital wildfire spreading through our neighborhood. I watched her face, waiting for the moment when she'd check the community email, when she'd see the group chat, when reality would finally catch up with her. It happened at 10:47 a.m. I was pretending to read the newspaper. Who even reads physical newspapers anymore? But I grabbed it from the driveway specifically to have something to hide behind, when I heard her make this small sound. Not quite a gasp, not quite a choke, somewhere between surprise and horror. I peeked over the top of the sports section and saw her staring at her phone, face going progressively paler. Something wrong? I asked innocently. She looked up at me, and I saw about 17 different emotions flash across her face in rapid succession. Shock, confusion, anger, fear, and something that might have been the dawning realization that she was absolutely screwed. Did you see the neighborhood email this morning? Her voice was tight, controlled, like she was trying very hard not to sound panicked. No, I don't usually check that until later. Why, something important? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could practically see her brain working overtime, trying to figure out if I was genuinely clueless or playing dumb. Someone sent out some pictures and videos. Of what? I prompted, lowering my newspaper slightly, letting just enough concern show on my face to seem believable. Of people in the neighborhood being inappropriate. Inappropriate how? Just inappropriate, she snapped, and there was the anger bubbling up through the panic. Someone's being a creep with a camera, apparently. It's an invasion of privacy. Huh, I said thoughtfully. That does sound concerning. What kind of pictures are we talking about? She stood abruptly, coffee forgotten. I need to make some calls, she said, already heading back upstairs, phone clutched in her hand like a life preserver. I listened to her footsteps racing up the stairs, heard our bedroom door close, heard the muffled sound of her voice talking urgently to someone. Probably Marcus, probably panicking together about how their secret wasn't so secret anymore. My phone buzzed again. Linda this time. I'm watching the group chat. This is magnificent. She know yet? I texted back. Just found out. Currently upstairs in crisis mode. Perfect. See you at the party? Bringing my famous brownies. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Around 11:30, Tyler called me. Actual phone call, not text, which meant this was serious. Dude, he said when I answered. Dude. That's a lot of emphasis on dude, I replied calmly. It's your wife. In those screenshots. I just put it together. That's your house. That's her car. Holy shit. Man, are you okay? I let a pause hang there, the kind of pause that says, I'm a man processing devastating information rather than I'm a man who orchestrated this entire situation and is currently enjoying it immensely. Yeah, I saw. Just saw, actually. Bianca's upstairs right now. I don't even know what to say, Tyler. I feel like an idiot. Bro, you're not the idiot here. She is. She's the one who got caught. Everyone's talking about it. Like, everyone. Mrs. Patterson already unfollowed her on Facebook. The Wilsons are posting cryptic quotes about loyalty. It's a whole thing. Jesus, I said, and I didn't have to fake the emotion in my voice because even though this was exactly what I'd planned, hearing it described back to me was surreal. Is everyone going to be talking about this at the party? Are you kidding? This is the party now. Nobody cares about the potluck. Everyone's going to show up just to see what happens. It's like watching a train wreck, except the train is your marriage and we all have front row seats. Sorry, that was insensitive. No, it's accurate, I said. Look, I'll see you there. I need to figure out what to say to Bianca. Good luck, man. Seriously. And hey, if you need anything, I'm here. Beer, couch to crash on, alibi for when you finally snap and set her stuff on fire, whatever. I hung up and sat there in my kitchen, listening to Bianca's muffled voice still on the phone upstairs, probably trying to do damage control on a situation that was way past the point of control. The neighborhood knew. The community knew. By tonight, probably half the town would know because this is exactly the kind of gossip that spreads faster than any virus. At noon, Bianca came back downstairs. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater. Her face was clean of makeup, and she looked like someone who'd been crying or was about to start. "I don't think we should go to the block party," she said quietly. "Why not?" I asked, standing up and grabbing my jacket. "Everyone's expecting us. It'd look weird if we didn't show." "It'll look weirder if we do show," she hissed. "Everyone's seen those pictures. They know. They all know." "Know what?" I asked, and I let just enough edge into my voice to make her flinch. "What exactly do they know, Bianca?" She opened her mouth, closed it, and I could see her trying to figure out how to spin this, how to explain it away, how to make herself the victim somehow. It's not what it looks like. Really." I walked toward her slowly. "Because it looks like my wife has been letting another man into our house while I'm at work. It looks like she's been lying about where she is and who she's with. It looks like she locked me out in freezing weather while she was probably texting him. So please, enlighten me. What exactly is it if not what it looks like?" Her eyes filled with tears, and for a split second, I almost felt bad. Almost. "We should talk about this. Privately. Not at a neighborhood party where everyone's going to be staring." "Oh, now you want privacy," I said. "That's rich. Come on. We're going. You wanted to be the talk of the neighborhood? Congratulations. Let's go give them a show." The block party was exactly as awkward as I'd hoped it would be, which is to say it was spectacularly, magnificently, beautifully uncomfortable for everyone except me. We walked down the street together, Bianca and I, looking like a couple heading to a social event instead of what we actually were, a woman walking toward her public execution and the man who'd built the gallows. The moment we turned the corner onto the main street where they'd set up tables and those sad little decorations that neighborhood committees think make events festive, I felt the energy shift. Conversations didn't exactly stop, but they definitely stuttered. People's eyes tracked us like we were celebrities at a premiere, except instead of admiration, their stares were full of pity, judgment, and that particular kind of excitement people get when they're about to witness drama they can talk about for months. Mrs. Henderson, the self-appointed neighborhood moral authority, actually clutched her pearls. Like, literally reached up and touched her necklace in that way that says, "I'm scandalized but also thrilled to have something to be scandalized about." Dave from number 33 gave me this sympathetic nod that somehow managed to communicate both "sorry bro" and "this is wild" simultaneously. Jennifer the yoga mom looked away entirely, suddenly very interested in the vegetable platter nobody was eating. Bianca gripped my arm tighter, her nails digging into my jacket. "Everyone's staring," she whispered urgently. "Are they?" I said loudly enough for nearby people to hear. I hadn't noticed. Maybe they're just being friendly. We made it to the food table, and I loaded up a plate with potato salad and whatever casserole the Johnsons had brought that looked like it contained 17 types of cheese and zero nutritional value. Bianca didn't take anything, just stood there looking like she wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole, which honestly, fair reaction given the circumstances. Tyler appeared at my elbow, beer in hand, looking like he'd been waiting for us to arrive. "Hey man," he said, clapping me on the shoulder with just a bit too much force. "How you holding up?" "Oh, you know," I said, taking a bite of casserole. "Living the dream. Saturdays are great." Bianca excused herself to go to the bathroom, practically running toward the community center building, and the second she was out of earshot, Tyler leaned in. "Dude, she looks miserable." "Does she?" I watched her retreating form. "Huh, weird." Over the next hour, I watched Bianca's social life collapse in real time, and it was honestly more entertaining than anything Netflix had produced all year. Her friend group, those women she'd done book club with, gone to brunch with, posted Instagram stories with, they all suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be. One by one, they made excuses and left. "Oh, I forgot I have a thing. My kid just texted, emergency. I think I left my oven on." Her cousin Sarah, actual cousin, not the fake Oregon one, straight up unfollowed her on social media right there at the party, and I know this because she announced it loudly while standing near the dessert table. "I just can't support that kind of behavior," Sarah declared to anyone listening, which was everyone because the whole party had basically become a referendum on Bianca's life choices. The salon owner, Rita, who'd been doing Bianca's hair for 3 years, pulled out her phone, and started scrolling through her appointment book. I didn't have to hear the conversation to know what was happening. She was finding creative ways to be fully booked for the foreseeable future. Bianca's hair appointments were apparently getting rescheduled to sometime around 2047. Meanwhile, I was having the time of my life. People kept coming up to me with sympathy and support, treating me like I was some kind of wounded hero instead of the architect of this entire situation. "You deserve better," Mrs. Patterson told me, handing me a brownie. "She never deserved you," Mike with the loud dog said, offering me a beer. Even Gerald from work showed up. Apparently he lived in the neighborhood. Who knew? And for once, his presence wasn't completely annoying. Linda arrived fashionably late, as planned, carrying a tray of brownies that were, by all accounts, incredible. She gave me the tiniest wink as she passed, so subtle nobody else would have noticed, and I had to suppress a smile. This woman had helped orchestrate a social takedown with the precision of a military operation, all while maintaining perfect plausible deniability and bringing baked goods. Icon behavior. Bianca finally emerged from wherever she'd been hiding and found me surrounded by supportive neighbors. Her face was red, her eyes puffy, and she looked like someone who'd finally realized that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences involve becoming a social pariah at a community potluck. "Can we go home?" she asked quietly, and there was no fight left in her voice. Just defeat. "Already," I said, checking my watch. "We just got here an hour ago. Don't you want to stay? Catch up with your friends." I gestured to the general area where her former friend group had been, now conspicuously empty. "Please," she said, and it came out almost like begging. I looked around at the party, at all these people who now knew the truth, at the kingdom Bianca had built for herself crumbling faster than a sandcastle at high tide. "Yeah," I said finally. "Let's go home." We walked back in silence, and I could feel her shame radiating off her like heat. By Monday, I knew things would be even worse. The gossip would spread beyond our neighborhood. Her workplace would probably hear about it. That gym where Marcus worked? Someone would definitely make sure they knew. The social consequences were just beginning, and I hadn't even filed for divorce yet. Back home, I made myself comfortable on the couch while Bianca disappeared upstairs, probably to cry or call Marcus or Google how to recover from public humiliation. I pulled out my phone and texted Linda. "Mission accomplished." She responded immediately. "Told you. Never go halfway." I smiled, turned on the TV, and settled in. For the first time in months, possibly years, I felt completely at peace. My wife's world was falling apart, and mine? Mine was just beginning. 2 weeks later, I moved into a small downtown loft. Nothing fancy, just a studio with exposed brick and windows that actually let in sunlight, which was more than I could say about the emotional darkness I'd been living in for months. The divorce papers were filed, the house was going on the market, and I was officially starting over. 34 years old and rebuilding from scratch, but honestly, I'd never felt lighter. I decided to throw a housewarming party, small, intimate, just real people who'd actually been there for me. Tyler showed up with beer and terrible advice about dating apps. A few coworkers came, some neighbors from the old block who'd taken my side, and Linda, of course, who brought wine that probably cost more than my security deposit. The place was filled with music, laughter, and actual genuine conversation. No more fake smiles, no more pretending everything was fine, no more walking on eggshells around someone who'd checked out of our marriage months ago. Just real people, real connections, and the kind of peace that comes from finally being honest about your life. Halfway through the evening, Linda appeared at my elbow with that knowing smile. "She's downstairs," she said quietly, nodding toward the window. I walked over and looked down at the street. There was Bianca, standing on the sidewalk, staring up at my building with this lost expression. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of consequences had physically diminished her. She was trying to recognize the man I'd become, someone who wasn't waiting around to be treated like an option anymore. The irony wasn't lost on me. For the first time in our entire relationship, I had the key, the warm house, the party, the life. And she was the one standing outside in the cold, locked out, irrelevant. I didn't feel angry looking at her. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. Completely, utterly done. That chapter was closed, and I was already several pages into a better story. I walked onto my balcony with my drink, and the cool evening air felt refreshing instead of punishing. Bianca looked up from the street below, her eyes full of something that might have been regret, or maybe just confusion about why karma had decided to collect with interest. I raised my glass to her in a silent toast, like a classy villain in a movie who'd just won the final battle without throwing a single punch. No words were necessary. The gesture said everything. I'm good up here. Thanks for asking. She stood there for another moment, probably waiting for me to come down, to yell, to give her the dramatic confrontation she maybe thought she deserved. But I just turned and walked back inside, back to the warmth, the laughter, the people who actually gave a damn. Linda handed me a fresh glass of wine. To new beginnings, she said, her eyes sparkling with something that looked like pride. I clinked my glass against hers. To warm nights and locked doors. My phone buzzed, Bianca's text lighting up the screen. Why are you doing this? I smiled and typed back the same line she'd sent me that frozen night. Come home early next time, winking face. Revenge? Nah. This was justice, served cold, exactly how she'd left me that night. And it tasted absolutely perfect.